All right, good evening, everybody. This is Tech Thursdays, episode 159. We are going to be talking about new hardware news that is kind of a continuation from last week. Last week was Computex, although it was kind of boring overall, but we have some stuff to talk about concerning new hardware. And then the other thing, too, that I've kind of been playing around with this week, if you tuned into either of the recent live streams that we did yesterday, there was one, and then there was one on Tuesday evening where I actually did a PC build video. So see, that's why you guys need to hit the bell icon so you get notified when I go live. But we did put together an old legacy computer because I've been playing around with the idea of seeing how viable is DDR3. So this is the FX8350. So we did do a PC build video featuring this really old CPU, 14-year-old CPU now from 2012. This is the pile driver architecture. So this is before Ryzen was a thing. And we did another live stream, which was yesterday, and we looked at the performance of the FX8350, specifically in a multitude of different games, because the focus was on gaming. Because if all you do is use a desktop computer for email, YouTube videos, streaming services, whatever, basically lightweight stuff that doesn't really use the processor to its fullest, then yeah, the 8350 from 14 years ago is still going to perform fine. But if you want to do actual, hard, heavy lifting, exercise the CPU via games, modern games in particular, high-resolution gaming, multiplayer gaming, all those sort of things, what we learned was that the CPU is a huge bottleneck. Now, I did try to make the build a true retro legacy build, so I didn't use any modern GPUs. I specifically used the GTX 1080 SLI. If you guys tuned into either of those two live streams, you saw those two graphics cards in action. And the conclusion was DDR3 might still be viable in 2026, but the FX8350 is definitely not viable for gaming, at least for modern gaming, like UE5, new developer engines, rendering techniques, all that kind of stuff, path tracing. It's just not going to work. It's just too old. So we're going to do another live stream similar to what we did yesterday, featuring another CPU. And I have here with me the Intel, there it is, the Intel original packaging, Core i7 4770K, LGA 1150. So this is going to be, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to do GTX 1080 SLI because it's a retro build. I'm not going to pair this up with some brand new GPU from 2026 because why would I do that? We're going to be doing retro build, DDR3, and take a look at can you play modern games at acceptable performance levels, playable experiences with a legacy computer. So the i7 4770K is kind of the pinnacle of the DDR3 generation because there is Broadwell, so there is 5th gen Intel, which is also compatible with DDR3, but those processors were short-lived and they were very, very hard to find. And Intel, for some reason, never actually did a K-series overclockable SKU, at least one that you could commonly get from a Micro Center or Newegg back in the day. And this would have been 2014, 2015, early 2015. when that would have been relevant. So we're definitely doing a legacy build because the motherboard and the CPU are more than 10 years old. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I always talk about the upgrade cycles in terms of 3-year, 5-year, and 7-year life cycles. So game consoles function on a 7-year life cycle in terms of the relevant life cycle. Now, obviously, they live longer than 7 years, but when I say 7 years, from the time a game console launches till it hits 7 years old, that is when, at the 7-year-old mark, that is when they introduce the next generation of consoles. So we talked about that. But in terms of retro, what is retro? Well, retro is if you go over 7 years old. And I've been playing around with DDR3. Why have I been playing around with DDR3? Because obviously DDR5 is incredibly expensive. Flash memory is also really expensive right now. Even DDR4, believe it or not, DDR4, although still mostly affordable, DDR4 for being so old is also overpriced considering its age. And just the general market that we're in right now as PC enthusiasts, it's just not a good time to be building a brand new computer. So I figured I'm going to go in the opposite direction. I'm going to go and look at legacy hardware and see, can you actually game on an old computer? And, you know, the results are mixed. In the case of the FX 8350, as we showed yesterday, yeah, you can game on it, but if you want to game on it, don't try to live stream on it while also gaming. That's one thing that I learned. Don't live stream with an 8350 while trying to play games all on one computer because it can't handle it. If you guys go watch the live stream, if you missed the live stream, 2 of the games were playable, but again, they were always like dropping below 60 a lot. And then the other 5 games were either completely unplayable. In the case of one game, the game wouldn't even launch. And in the case of another game, the load times were so bad, I guess because of the lack of direct storage support or something, or some instruction set was missing or whatever. You know, that's just, it comes with the territory when you have a very old CPU. But we're going to keep on. We're going to take the GTX 1080 SLI. We're going to slowly move it to a different computer, working our way to more modern systems to the point where I eliminate the CPU bottleneck and I become fully GPU bound. That's the goal with this exercise that I'm playing around with all these old computers. So speaking of old computers, I dug out another. Oh wow, the green screen effect is making this manual look black, even though it's green. But I have this old motherboard. Let's go ahead and turn on camera number 2 here. There we go. So here, let's make this resizes. There we go. So we're gonna do like a little show and tell demo segment here on Tech Thursdays. We've done this in the past, but we're doing it again. So this is my second ever computer that I built all those years ago. My first computer, I don't have the motherboard with me. The first computer, I was going to try to show you guys my very first computer. I dug it out of storage the other day when I was sourcing parts for this ancient, or I guess this retro build. But unfortunately, I saw 2 of the capacitors on the motherboard leaked. Like the top of them opened up and I could see the electrolyte like leaking. So I decided not to try to power that one on, which is unfortunate because that's my very first motherboard. And that is a Socket 939 for reference. AMD Athlon 64 for World of Warcraft. Single, 1 core, 1 thread. What was it? Athlon 3200 plus, 3200 plus was my very first CPU. But this one is my second computer. So this one, you guys know me, I went from the Athlon to the Phenom back in the day. So I do also have a Q6600 that I dug out of the trash a few years ago. And unfortunately, it came with the motherboard. I can't power it on because I don't have any DDR2. So I can't actually show you a Q6600 that I dug out of the trash, complete with the motherboard. It was in the socket with the Intel reference cooler. So I can't do that, but I can show you my second computer with the AMD Phenom. I actually have more than one Phenom here. The one that's actually in the motherboard right now is the 6-core. This one, the Phenom 2. Phenom 2 X6 1045T. Phenom 2. So this is the CPU that existed before FX. And then FX got replaced by Ryzen. So that's kind of the history on AMD. So first there was AMD Athlon XP. Then there was the AMD Athlon 64, which is my very first computer. Then there was the Athlon 2 and Phenom. There was the Phenom 1. Then there was the Phenom 2, which is this one. And then there was also the Gamer one, this one. So I've got both of them here. I got two Phenoms. I got the 6-core Phenom, which was kind of AMD's attempt to try to compete with the Intel HEDT at the time without quad-channel memory. And it was much more of a budget option. I mean, this was 6 cores, 6 threads. And then there was the Gamer's Champion, if you were an AMD person back in the day, the Phenom 2 965 Black Edition. There it is. You can see it right there. Actually. Well, let's just go ahead and power up the machine here. This motherboard is very old. This is my second motherboard. And you can see there's, like the motherboard that we showcased on Tuesday, this one doesn't have, back then they didn't do any I/O covers on the back here, so all the I/O is exposed. And you can see the cool thing about this board is it has PCI. This is old. These light blue slots are PCI. They are not AGP. And they're not PCI Express or PCIe. This one is a PCIe. This is PCIe, and obviously this graphics card is in the top PCIe slot. So the reason why I have the graphics card in is because the Phenom does not have any integrated graphics. So you have to have some kind of discrete GPU if you want to, use the computer. So this is the Phenom 2. There are no fancy buttons. Oh, the other thing too is it has a north bridge. This is the north bridge. This is the south bridge. The south bridge is what we refer to as the chipset when referring to modern desktop computers. But the Phenom 2. This motherboard, if you want to know the actual model, it is this motherboard. The Asus M4A785 TDV Evo. So this is the motherboard. This is the actual manual. It's green colored, so my green screen thing is like, the effect on the stream is like messing up with the colors there. But that's basically it. So let's go ahead. Now I have to use a screwdriver to turn it on. I gotta short the pins here to get this to power up. There we go. And then let's get into the BIOS. I don't have any sort of boot drive. Let's go into the BIOS here. I need to bring up this on the screen. There it is. There we go. Let me make this smaller. So this is kind of like a show and tell, I guess. I mean, we're playing with retro computers. So yeah, this is super retro. The motherboard that we were using yesterday with the 8350, that one had a much more modern UEFI BIOS compared to what you can see on this old Phenom system. So you can see no mouse. You have to know how to use the keyboard to go through the BIOS. So you can see, oh, the CMOS battery was dead. It thought it was New Year's Day. When I first turned it on, it thought it was New Year's Day. The year was 2002. And I was like, okay, I gotta fix that CMOS. So I swapped the CMOS battery. And then, because I had a bunch of extras from having to replace my PlayStation 2 and my GameCube coin batteries back in, what, January of this year. So I figured, hey, I'll just put another extra coin battery in this old motherboard so it can tell time again. So this, you guys can see eSATA was a thing. SATA, this was the SATA 6 gigs. So it did have SATA 3 at this point in time. System information here. You can see there's the CPU. So we have the BIOS is actually the latest BIOS. July 23rd, 2010. Yeah, this is definitely my second computer. I remember I built this computer in the summer of 2010. That's when I built this computer. AMD Phenom 2 X6 1045T, 2.7 gigahertz. You can see I've maxed it out. The motherboard has a maximum of 16 gigs of DDR3 as the maximum size supported. So we're doing 4 sticks of RAM. That's, what is that, 4 times 4? So a total of 16 gigs of DDR3. The CPU, I believe, supports DDR3 1333. We're actually using some of these Kingston whatever HyperX. Yeah, Kingston HyperX 8 gig DDR3 1600 CL9. Let's try to figure out how to load the profile here. Let's go to the advanced tab here. So jumper free configuration. Okay, so here is where you do your overclocking. CPU overclocking. You can do manual, you can do overclock profile, or you can do something called test mode, which I don't even remember what that even does. GPU overclocking. I assume this is the integrated. If it had integrated, actually no, because these don't have integrated. Yeah, I know what they do. So the North Bridge did have onboard integrated graphics, depending on the motherboard, and this motherboard does have integrated graphics. Okay, it does show that I did lose internet connection there for a second. Looks like we're back. So then the PCIe overclocking, I'm not sure why anyone would do this. This is, I don't know what that's for. And then we have the CPU ratio and voltage processor frequency multiplier. This is actually where you do your overclock. So this is a thing about the AMD CPUs compared to the Intel CPUs. So Intel CPUs, they started selling K SKUs that had unlocked multipliers. AMD did have locked multipliers, just like Intel back in the day. And I forget, I'm trying to remember what denotes a overclockable AMD, like an unlocked multiplier. I think it was the T on the end of the SKU or something. I forgot what it was. I know the Phenom 2 Black Edition did have an unlocked multiplier. I don't remember if the 1045T does. I think it was locked, actually. But anyway, this is where you would change the multiplier to increase the frequency. And then AMD Turbo Core technology, the default was enabled. This allowed it to boost beyond the max rated speed by like a certain amount of megahertz for I think it was the 2 best cores. And then, so they had something called Turbo Core. Intel had something called Turbo Boost, which worked in a similar fashion. And then there's the CPU North Bridge frequency. So remember, back in the day, if you guys remember, maybe if you're too young to remember, CPUs long ago used to have some of their functions basically spread out across not only the CPU, but the motherboard. So the motherboard had something called a North Bridge. That's what this NB means. And the North Bridge had its own multiplier. It actually had its own frequency independent of the core frequency on the CPU. And there's also the South Bridge as well. In modern CPUs, the North Bridge exists inside the CPU itself now, and the South Bridge has been renamed as the chipset. And really, the South Bridge in today's modern CPU architecture is no more than a a little, like a hub for connecting a bunch of SATA, USB, and PCIe lanes. So CPU overvoltage. What does this do? This is to dial in an overvolt or an undervolt, I guess. I guess you can go negative, you can reduce, you can go positive or negative. And then the voltage definition, north bridge. This is basically overvolting the north bridge. So there's overvolting on the CPU, overvolting on the north bridge. CPU VDDA, I don't remember what this one is for. I don't know if this is the hypertransport facing side, kind of like the VDDG on a modern Ryzen. Load line calibration. You guys remember load line? This is to offset droop, but you don't want it to ever go 0 out or positive, because then that can be very, very bad. That can damage the CPU under load. And then the hypertransport configuration. So HT is hypertransport. Hypertransport is an interesting concept that you don't really hear about much in modern Ryzen CPUs. The North Bridge is kind of like the fabric now, but the hypertransport is also kind of like the Infinity fabric on a Ryzen CPU. It's the North Bridge is kind of the Uncore elements, and the hypertransport is now kind of the Infinity fabric. So this is kind of what became the Infinity fabric. So you can see, oh look, notice how 2 gigahertz is kind of the maximum speed. Infinity fabric today runs at 2 gigahertz typically. So link width, that's interesting. I'd never remember having to adjust any of these things. Overvoltage on the Infinity fabric. Memory clock mode. Here, if you do manual, you can key in the actual MCLK. This is MCLK. Remember, these are DDR3 speeds. And the Phenom 2 is rated for DDR3 1333. So that means 16, or not 16. It means 667. So 667. Because 667 times 2, that's going to be close to your 1333. And if you take 800 and you double it up, why are we doubling it up? DDR, double data rate. So 800 megahertz equals DDR3 1600. So it is the maximum that this motherboard allows you to do. But that is considered an overclock, because the CPU's memory controller, the Phenom 2 memory controller, is designed for 1333. Similar to Intel's Sandy Bridge at the time. But let's go ahead and just, leave this back on auto, because we're not actually going to save any of this. But anyway, DRAM timing mode, DCT, I forget what this is. I actually don't remember what these do. This is like, is this like the command mode, 1T, 2T or something? I'm not sure. I can't remember what that does. Memory overvoltage, so this is where you dial in your, if we're talking DDR3. DDR3 is typically 1.5 volts. 1.5 volts for DDR3. Now, some extreme memory profiles, XMP, back in the day would do 1.65. Notice how it is yellow now. So it's saying, hey, you're going outside of the normal. But certain XMP memory kits back in the day would do 1.65. But 1.5 was the natural, and most of the DDR3 kits, actually all the DDR3 that I have, except for maybe one kit, has XMP even running at 1.5 volts. I think I have one older kit that runs at 1.65 for the XMP profile. Chipset overvoltage, again, these are voltages. South bridge overvoltage, so that one I don't think you ever need to change, because I don't even know why this needs to be different. But anyway, this is where you would do your overclocks back in the day. This is what it looked like. It looks super retro. CPU configuration. Here we have, oh wow, AGISA. AGISA, that acronym was still used. I don't remember that acronym being used before Ryzen, but apparently it's existed all this time. AGISA 3.7.0.1, AMD Phenom 2 X6 1045T. This is the revision. The hypertransport frequency is 2 gigahertz. So basically, hypertransport is, you could think of it like the Infinity Fabric. If you're coming from Ryzen and you're trying to understand these retro CPUs. Northbridge clock is also like Fabric clock. So, they typically were always the same speed because you wanted them to be synchronized in a 1-to-1 ratio. But later on with the FX series, I remember on Vishera, you could run the hypertransport at a higher speed versus the Northbridge, and you could still get better performance that way. Typically, Northbridge on the FX 8350 would be 2200 megahertz, and the hypertransport would be set to 2600 megahertz. That was typically the preferred speed. That was the sweet spot for the FX 8350. So that's why a lot of people weren't getting very good performance out of FX 8350 back in the day, because out of the box, it was just, I don't know, it was just set too low. And the planar silicon, 32 nanometer, that thing could easily do 4.4 gigahertz. I mean, later on, AMD released these factory overclock SKUs for an exorbitant amount of money. I forget what they were called, the 9370 and the 9590 or something, FX 9590. That thing was 4.8, it was like 4.7 to 5 gigahertz out of the box, but it used like 250 to 300 watts. Yeah, on AM3 Plus. That was insane. But those things had Northbridge at 2.2 gigahertz and hypertransport at 2.6 gigahertz. So those things were basically factory overclocked. But you can see cool and quiet. So that's your C states. It also supported C1E back in the day. Virtualization is somewhere. Actually, where is it? Did I do? Oh yeah, secure virtual. That's SVM mode for AMD. So that's if you want to run like virtual machines. The chipset, Northbridge configuration, memory configuration. So here is where you would set whether you're doing exclusive OR of the address bits. I don't know what this, like when it becomes 9, I don't know what that does actually. I mean, it's adding 3 bits. I don't know how that changes the argument that much. And then 6 versus 12, so you're basically doubling the amount of address bits. So I don't know. A lot of these things I don't remember. It's been so long since I've seen these settings that I don't remember what they are without consulting like a guide or something. Enable unused clocks to DIMMs. Even memory slots are not populated. Oh, this is for like tertiaries. This affects tertiaries. It's not exactly like TREFI, but it's a similar thing. It's like your cycle intervals. It's like, do you want to do it like 2 sticks versus 4 sticks makes a big difference. So if you enable the clock to all DIMMs, even if you have only 2 sticks, you know, that kind of thing, versus if you don't. And then power down enable mode was the thing back in the day. Wow. ECC. So apparently, the Phenom 2 supported ECC memory. ECC DDR3. Wow, I never would have guessed. I would have completely forgotten that. Alternate VID specifies the alternate vid while in low power states. That's interesting. You can actually undervolt it while idling. But I don't know. Personally, I would just leave this on auto, because this is the thing where if you set it too low, your computer can just hard freeze when idling, because it needs a certain amount of voltage to stay stable. And then the integrated graphics, this is graphics that exist on the motherboard. I just realized I didn't need this graphics card, because the Northbridge has integrated graphics on this motherboard. Yeah, in fact, there's an HDMI port on the motherboard, so I didn't actually need this GPU. So this is it, actually. So you can see it has whatever this primary video controller. So GFX0. This is like the hierarchy. So it's like the first thing you want is what? GFX0, I assume that's the discrete GPP. I don't know what that is. IGFX, that sounds like integrated graphics, and then PCIe is the GPU. Or no, PCI. It's not PCIe. So maybe GFX0 is PCIe. GPP is the second PCIe. I don't know. I don't know what exactly that is referring to. But it's looking at these old BIOSes makes me realize, man, you really had to have a better understanding on what you were doing in here compared to the way things are nowadays. Side port clock speeds. This is a RAM clock speed. You can see 1333, like I said. Oh, wow. It can go all the way up to DDR3 2000. That's very fast, DDR3. That's approaching the limits of DDR3. Like, very high-end DDR3 was topping out around, like, 2400 to, like, 2666. That was considered, like, insanely high-end DDR3. Like, the DDR3 that I have is either 1866, which isn't even on here, or 2133. But most of my DDR3 is actually 1600. I'm not sure why why the divider is giving us these weird numbers, but this is something to do with the integrated graphics. So, overvolt on this stuff. Oh, here's your resizable bar. Here's resizable bar before resizable bar was ever even a thing that people talked about. So there's your resizable bar. That's hilarious. A Phenom can turn on above 4G decode for GPUs. And then you have the HDMI audio out, the integrated graphics. Onboard devices, these are basically the integrated audio or onboard audio. What is this, Firewire? Yeah, this thing has Firewire. Firewire, LAN, optical audio, front panel audio. It allowed you to toggle between AC97 if you had like a really old case or something. Like when I say really old case, I mean like mid 90s. And then HD audio, that's more like typical mid 2000s and up. Even today, all modern cases today, I think only have HD audio. I don't think anything today has AC97. SPDIF. Oh, wow. You could actually do... Oh, wait. What? So you have to choose between SPDIF and HDMI. So you can't get HDMI... You can't get sound out of HDMI unless you manually specify it. That makes sense, actually. You know why it makes sense to make SPDIF be the default? Because most people are probably going to use a GPU, so they're not going to use the built-in HDMI port on the back of the motherboard, but they might actually use SPDIF for surround sound audio 5.1 in this time period. We're talking like 2010. Not a lot of... I don't think ARC and eARC existed in 2010 in the AV world. So it's like, I don't think there was any AVRs that were doing ARC and eARC off of TVs. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that was a thing. So it makes sense to make this SPDIF. And then we have, your typical like Firewire and all this other stuff. So that's pretty cool. PCIe plug and play. Warning, setting wrong values in below sections may cause systems to malfunction. No lets the BIOS configure all the devices in the system. Yes lets the operating system configure plug-and-play devices not required for boot if your system has a plug-and-play. So this is more of, I would assume this is more like a hypervisor thing. Like if you were going to let a hypervisor have direct control over a peripheral, like outside of a traditional operating system setting. So maybe that's what this is for. USB configuration, legacy USB. It's funny hearing the word legacy USB from a 2010 motherboard when the fastest, the high speed was literally USB 2.0, not 3.0, 2.0. Yeah, this motherboard doesn't have 3.0. There's no blue USB ports on the back. So anyway, here's your ACPI. Oh, the other thing too is here's the fan. Fan's spinning pretty fast. 39 Celsius on the Phenom 2 6 core. 31 Celsius on the motherboard chip, or the Northbridge, I guess. We don't have any other fans. Here's our V cores, read in real time. Here's how you adjust your fan control. If you disable this, the fan will ramp to 100% all the time. And then you can basically, this is how you make it quiet. So you know how modern BIOSes show you this fancy graph to adjust your fan curves? Back then, you didn't have any of that. You had to tune your fan curve using these two numbers. This was your fan curve. You got your start speed based off of a certain CPU temperature, and you have maximum fan speed at a certain temperature. So if you wanted your system to be quiet, you would raise this number. What does it let me do? What the highest is what? 70? 75. You would raise this up to make it take longer to ramp up the speed of the fan as the CPU gets hotter. So if you had really good cooling, like if you had a Noctua D14, you could set this to like 75 degrees and you would never hear the computer because the Noctua would be so powerful, it would basically keep the CPU temperature no higher than like 60 degrees, you know, so it would always be quiet. So that's how you had to do your fan curves back in the day. But it's all here, like all the stuff is here, you know, like this is wake up from PS by 2 keyboard mouse. There's no wake up by USB, which is interesting. ACPI is here. Where's the SATA stuff? USB. No. No, I don't want to do that. I forgot where it was. Oh, APM? No. Yeah, somewhere in here is the difference between IDE. Oh, it's under boot. That's right. Boot device, priorities. Oh, one thing that's not here. Secure boot. Secure boot is not supported on this motherboard. You know, strangely enough, the motherboard that I got after this motherboard, because this is my second motherboard, my third motherboard actually does have the option to support secure boot. I was actually surprised to discover that because it's in there, but the strange thing is that motherboard got BIOS updates all the way until 2015. And 2015 was when Windows 10 was going RTM. So the way I think of DDR3 to me is basically Windows 7. When I think DDR3 computers, I think Windows 7 operating system. Like they're synonymous with each other. Because when I think Windows 10, I think DDR4. Because Ryzen came out when Windows 10 was a thing. And by that time, Intel had also already migrated to DDR4 with Skylake. So, you know, Intel went to DDR4 in as early as 2014 with their HEDT platform with Haswell E X99. But that was very expensive, so most people didn't buy that. Most people actually went to DDR4 with 6th gen Intel Skylake i7 6700K or i5 6600K, or they waited until Kaby Lake, the 7th gen, or 8th gen Coffee Lake, or they got Ryzen, because Ryzen was always DDR4. Like AM4 is basically DDR4. AM5 is DDR5. So with AMD, it's pretty easy. It's funny that I say that. It's like I'm oversimplifying because AM3 is DDR3. So it's kind of weird how it just works out that way with the AMD sockets equaling certain DDR generations, but that's just how it is. So let's go ahead and wait. What is this? Wait for F1 if error. Yeah. Add on ROM for display. I don't know what that does. So that's basically what I wanted to show you guys. Like, this is the old, there's Asus Easy Flash. There's you update your BIOS. And there's no BIOS flashback on this, so you have to use Easy Flash. And that's basically it. So that's what an old legacy BIOS looks like. So I'll go ahead and I guess I'll turn the computer off. But I mean, just to kind of show it one last time here. This is the oldest computer I have that actually still works. Because my first motherboard has leaky capacitors, so I don't trust trying to turn it on. I don't want it to blow up in my face or anything. So we'll save that one for another day. I do have a Q6600, but I have no way to turn it on to show you guys because I don't have any DDR2 memory. So those would be my oldest computers. My oldest computer is DDR1. I have a Q6600 that's DDR2, which I dug out of the trash. And then this computer, this one is my second computer, and this is my first DDR3. And I was thinking the other day, it's like how many CPU upgrade cycles did I spend on DDR3? Well, there's this, there's FX, and there's Haswell. So basically 3. I went from Phenom to FX, and then FX to Intel's 4th gen. So let's go ahead and actually, I guess we can show you guys one more time the... Oh, the nice thing, if you noticed, this cooler is actually the Wraith Prism. This cooler is meant to cool a Ryzen 7 3800X. But the nice thing about AMD's coolers are because that latch design, you can plug these relatively new air coolers on legacy old Phenom motherboards, as well as FX motherboards. So that's the cool thing about it. Yeah, it actually, like, I'm not going to, like, lift it up because I have the GPU just hanging out of the slot here. But, that's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and turn this off by shorting the power. So I short the power with this screwdriver to turn it off because the motherboard is too old. It's also a relatively low-end motherboard. There's no power and reset buttons physically on the motherboard. But anyway, just to kind of show where things are, let's turn this on, I guess. So you can see down at the bottom, there is the CMOS battery. I had to replace that CMOS battery today. There's the beep speaker. There's where I had to short the pins to turn it on. And then we have PCIe. Let's do something here. Let me turn this off, but I'll leave it plugged in. I want to take out the GPU so I can get a better look at the actual motherboard. So these old PCIe slots, they have these interesting little, almost like a bendable plastic, almost like a rubbery latch here that holds the GPU in place. So the GPU that I'm using is just a very basic AMD Radeon Pro W7500. I used to use an old RX 480 reference card, but ever since I got this and I stopped using this because of the Intel Arc Professional series, I basically use this for all my debugging for older systems because this thing doesn't require any PCIe power cable. It just pulls the power off of the motherboard because it's so energy efficient. And it's a single slot, so it's super easy to throw in the system just to test stuff. But this is the North Bridge. So the integrated graphics are actually on the motherboard. And then this is the South Bridge. You can see SATA is right here. And then we're running 4 sticks of DDR3. You can see we have Kingston HyperX 1600 CL9, as well as more Kingston HyperX CL9. You should run GTA 5 on one of your future SLI builds. Why GTA 5? I don't have GTA 5. but for the question earlier about the specs, this is a Phenom, AMD Phenom 2 6-core. So you can see it is the, what is it called? The 10, you guys can see right here, 1045T 6 cores, Phenom. Phenom 2. Yeah, that's the CPU. I also have my trusty Black Edition, which I used for a couple of years, and then I got the FX, and then I eventually went to Intel in 2013. So that was June 2013 when I bought my first Intel CPU, which we will be looking at this weekend. Spoiler alert, Intel i7 Haswell inbound. Stay tuned. We'll be looking at this weekend another retro build with the GTX 1080 SLI. i7 4770K. So LGA 1150. DDR3's last stand. Can DDR3 survive in 2026? That's what we're going to be looking at this weekend. So if you're interested in that and you're new to the channel, get subscribed and hit the bell icon so you can tune into that live stream. Notice that it has IDE right here. Look at that. You can tell this motherboard is retro. I don't know why the camera's not focusing the way I want it to focus. Hold on, maybe if I point, will it focus? It feels like it looks like it's blurry. It looks like it's out of focus. I don't know. Maybe if I put it more in frame. Well, anyway, you can see this motherboard. First of all, this motherboard has an X1 PCI. What is this X1 good for? Wi-Fi. You want to add Wi-Fi to a motherboard? You throw it in on an X1. And it goes above the GPU, so it's easy. GPU, PCIe, PCI, PCI, PCIe, PCI. Now, these different colors probably mean that there's different lanes. So this one is X16, probably X16 Gen 2. And this one's probably X8 Gen, if I had to guess. X8 Gen 2. I'm not sure, though. And then you have an IDE cable here, a bunch of SATA. So yeah, you can tell, man, this is retro because it's got like so much old stuff. It has integrated graphics on a North bridge. It has an IDE. The fact it has an IDE means it is like totally retro. Like who uses IDE? Who uses IDE in 2026 in a consumer desktop? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not talking like some kind of legacy business somewhere. I'm talking like everyday people. No one's using this. You know, people are barely using SATA. I mean, there's still a bunch of people still use SATA. I mean, I still use SATA. But no one's using PCI. No one's using IDE. That's the sign that this is super retro. Super retro. This is PCIe Gen 2. And you can see the finned out. Let's move this camera up again here. Finned out VRM right here. Look at that VRM. Man, the Wraith Prism, though, this cool. I love the fact that I can just use this Wraith Prism on this old Phenom, and it gets the job done on this super old build. Like, I don't have to bother mounting a Noctua and all that stuff. No, I just throw this random Wraith Prism that came with my 3800X Zen 2, and yeah. It works on FX. It works on... I wouldn't recommend it for FX, just saying, but you can use it on an FX 8350, and you can use it on a Phenom 965 Black Edition, you know? So that's cool. And here's those Kingston memory sticks right there. Let me see if I can show you guys... Let me go get another motherboard here. I just want to show you guys... Since we're doing like a show and tell, let me get my old motherboard, even though it has broken capacitors. Okay. I actually grabbed two motherboards. This one, that's my first motherboard. Actually, let me move this motherboard now that we're done with it. Let me move it out of the way. Unplug the keyboard. Move this. I guess I'll just move the power supply all the way up, and I'll move this over here for now. Right, that's kind of out of the way. That's kind of out of the way. This is my very first motherboard. This is it, guys. This is the people have been asking me from time to time, what's your first computer? This is my first computer. EVGA. There it is. And look, it even has a fan. It has a fan on the motherboard. How cool is that? Look at that. EVGA branded little fan here. This is... I don't think it's going to focus. I don't think I have enough light on it. But this is the Socket 939. The original AMD 64. There's the leaky capacitor. See that? See how it's leaking? See that? See how it's raised? I don't know if you guys can see that, but look at those two capacitors. They're basically bulging out on the top. So I don't want to try to turn it on because I'm afraid that these might pop or something. But, I mean, that one looks really bad. That one's leaking really bad. But, yeah, I built this computer in the summer of 2006. Summer 2006 for Socket 939. This was already not the latest and greatest. This was already, I think, like a 2-year-old platform at that point. But that was all that I could afford back in the day. So, but this is it, man. And I built this so I could play World of Warcraft. I call this the WoW PC. Because all I did was build this first computer so I could play World of Warcraft, Half-Life 2, and Guild Wars 2, and maybe StarCraft Brood War, and Dota, and Frozen Throne, and all that stuff back in the day. You know, AoE 2, the Conquerors expansion. Those are the sort of games that I played. Oh, check it out. Postcode Debug. Postcode Debug on the Retro. 4 SATA. Those are SATA 2, not SATA 3. Those are SATA 2. So 3 gigabit per second, not 6 gigabit per second. And then we got a bunch of IDEs right here. I remember I had a DVD burner and a DVD drive. I had dual optical drives. So I was using the weird daisy chain style IDE cables from EVGA. But that's it. And the crazy thing is, I can put that Wraith Prism on top of this plate. It'll go right on here. I can literally use an AMD cooler meant for Ryzen on a legacy Athlon 64 motherboard. That's pretty cool. So you can see DDR1. This is DDR1. That's not even DDR2. That's DDR1. Oh, wow. These are flexing also. Yeah. These caps are leaking over here. Yeah. So this motherboard is definitely, you know, out to lunch. Look at those caps. Look at those caps. 1, 2, 3. All of them opening up. Look at that. Yeah, that looks pretty bad. Well, that is my first motherboard. That's where it all began. I don't really consider myself a tech enthusiast when I built this, though. It wasn't really until that Crosshair 5 Formula Z that we built Tuesday evening. That was when I became an enthusiast, when I built that FX8350 build. And then probably an equally interesting motherboard, I've got this. This is Intel inside. Underneath this is an Intel Q6600, the legendary Q6600. But what makes this even more interesting, this is an Intel motherboard. This is not Asus or MSI or Gigabyte or BioStar or ASRock. This is an Intel reference motherboard. Intel's official reference motherboard for the Q6600. I dug this out of e-waste a few years ago during the pandemic. So I never actually had an Intel computer during this time. My first Intel computer, as you guys know, is the 4th gen i7 4770K, which we will be looking at this weekend. But I did dig this out of the trash. I don't even know if it works, to be honest, because like I said at the beginning of the stream, this is DDR2, and I don't have any DDR2. I got a ton of DDR3. I've got quite a bit of DDR1, but I have like 0 DDR2. And I've got a ton of DDR4 and even more DDR5. So it's like, of all the DDRs, I've got 1, 3, 4, and 5, and 0 DDR2. So there's no way for me to know if this thing that I dug out of the trash actually works. But it looks pretty cool. So there it is, the Q6600. The Intel stock cooler still works. It was kind of banged up pretty bad on the back side. One of these little feet was broken. I had to fix it. This one, it was bent. So I had to fix it, but it works. I mean, in terms of the reference cooler, like, it works. You can see North Bridge integrated graphics right here under this big giant North Bridge, South Bridge right here. So you had these really weird latches, for the PCIe. So you had PCIe, PCI, PCIe, PCI. And then you have 4 SATA. Actually, there's a lot of SATA. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 SATA. Right-angled IDE. Another IDE. There's your power supply 24-pin. And then on the back, you've got 7.1, just like on all those other AMD motherboards that I showed. You have a parallel, a serial DB9. I don't know what this looks like. This looks like an analog audio, and PS by 2, and USB 2.0 4, and a FireWire. You got FireWire on this reference Intel board. So and running all HDD. Your first PC had a Phenom 4 with a stick of 768. Wait, they actually made 768? I had 512. So my first PC had 512 megs of RAM. It had 2 times 256. And then I upgraded to 2 gig. Oh, you had 256 plus 512? Oh, so you had asymmetrical RAM. You said you had a Phenom 4? Was it first gen Phenom, or was it second gen Phenom like this? Was it the Phenom 2, like this one, Black Edition? 965 Black Edition? Because this was AMD. I can't remember. You guys who remember this better than me, you guys let me know, what was the AMD CPU that competed with the Q6600? Because I don't actually know the answer to that. I've been trying to figure that out for a while. Was it the original Phenom? Because I know this Phenom 2 came out in like the end of 2009 and like 2010. This is like a 2010 CPU. So the first Phenom, which was not that good as far as I remember, was like what, 2008, 2009 or something. When was first gen Phenom? And I assume it's DDR2. What, because this is DDR2, so I imagine the AMD thing would have been like socket AM2. But I built my first PC around the time when the Q60. Well, no, that's not true. This was like 2007 or something like that. I don't know. Someone's gonna have to help me on that because my memory on like the history of computers, of desktop computing in like the mid to late 2000s is not very good. All I remember is I built my first PC, used it for like 4 years, and then got the Phenom 2. And that was it. Anyway, what else do I have here? I don't have a lot of other things to show. We showed the special like AMD Radeon memory the other day with RAM disk. You know, this is like the highest end DDR3 that I've got. And then, of course, I have all this limited edition Intel Extreme Masters memory from Patriot. So we got like 16 gigs of DDR3 right there, which we may use. But the plan is to utilize this motherboard coming soon to a theater near you. MSI Gaming. So stay tuned for that. Package looked much nicer back then. Compared to what? I mean, my Kingstons came in this, you know. That's DDR3 right there. I think it depends. All right, well, let's go ahead and turn this off. The capacitors on the Intel boards still look good. There's no sign of leaking on these big caps. So if I can find DDR2, I'll show you guys this old Q6600. We might do another retro stream featuring the Q6600. But if the FX8250 couldn't cut it, this thing's definitely going to look pretty bad. Because this is DDR2 versus DDR3. But for now, I'll just put this back over here. I'm going to probably do some testing with this later. So I'll just leave that on the table. That old Phenom. Okay. So let's change topics here a little bit, I guess. So that's all the old hardware. What about all the new hardware? Who here is planning to upgrade their PC this year, even though this year is not a good year? Let's do a poll. Are you planning to upgrade your PC this year? Yes or no? So who here is planning to upgrade their PC this year? And when I say upgrade, I mean, well, that's a very open-ended question because some people might think, "Oh, I'm going to get a new case this year, or I'm going to do a custom loop, you know, or whatever." Like, I mean, technically that's upgrade, I guess. I mean, it's not really what I think of when I think upgrade. When I think upgrade, I think like, you know, either new everything or new GPU or new CPU or new RAM or something. So we've had some new stuff this year. So you had 2026, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Q1. 270K plus. 260K plus? Is it 260K plus? Or is it 250K plus? I think 250K plus. Is that right? Core Ultra 7. Core Ultra 7, 270K plus. Core Ultra 5, 250K. I think it's 250. I think it's 250. It's gotta be 250. So who here upgraded? Okay, well, so it looks like a lot of people are not gonna upgrade. So let's close that one because I want to ask. I want to ask another poll. If you are upgrading, are you getting the Arrow Lake refresh? Yes or no? So are you, meaning the question is, well, if you don't know what Arrow Lake refresh is, then maybe you shouldn't vote, or just say no. Because it's funny that I say that, because it's like literally Arrow Lake refresh. I wonder what Arrow Lake refresh is, you know. Sometimes the answers are right in front of you, but I don't know, you know. Sometimes it's a mystery. So it seems like people are voting no. Either they don't know what Arrow Lake refresh is, and they can't figure it out, even if the answer was right in front of them. Or, you know, like if you're in class and the teacher like literally has the answer on the board, I wonder what it could possibly be. But, you know, we've had a couple of hardware releases earlier this year, and then we had another thing called the 99. This is even more dumb. 9950. Although I don't know. X3D2. This thing, the Ryzen 9 9950. Where is that thing? Where is that 9950 X3D2? I don't even know where it is. It's somewhere around. No, it's here. It's here. There it is. Oh no, that's not it. Here it is. What is this? There's a CPU in here. There's a CPU inside my 9950 X3D2 box. What is this CPU? There's literally a CPU inside this box. Oh, snap. Okay, my 9950 X3D2 box literally has my very first CPU in the box. That's it. The Athlon 64. That's it, guys. Athlon 64. Hold up. Turn. Oh, the lights are off. Where's that camera? Oh. This is it. My very first CPU. Athlon. Okay, it's the camera. The lighting is so bad. I can't. You guys can't read. This is it. This is my very first CPU. Athlon 64. The one that goes in that motherboard that has the leaky capacitors. somehow it ended up in the box of my 9950 X3D2. So we'll just put it back in there. Look, there it is. Athlon 64 inside a 9950 X3D2 box. So I'm not sure how it got in there because there's another CPU. There's a CPU in this box too, the 9950 X3D. What's in this? This is like Forrest Gump, you know? Like, you open a box of chocolates, you don't have no idea what's in here. What's in this? Oh my goodness. 5800X. There's a random Ryzen 7 5800X just chilling inside this 9950 X3D box. That's hilarious. So we got an old Athlon 64 pretending to be a D2, and we have a 5800X pretending to be a 9950X 3D. Hilarious. But it looks like a bunch of people are not getting Arrow Lake Refresh. Somebody is either getting it or already got it. Arrow Lake Refresh. Someone voted yes. If you voted yes, well, I don't want to give people's away. I mean, I don't know who voted for it, but I mean, I'm just curious if somebody is thinking of getting Arrow Lake Refresh. Like, what's the primary reason for getting Arrow Lake Refresh? And my other question is, do you already have Arrow Lake? Or if you don't, what is your reasoning for getting Arrow Lake Refresh? I don't know. You had the Athlon 64 3200 plus. That is exactly the CPU that I've got. Socket 939. We have the exact same CPU. That CPU is literally right here. Literally right there. Athlon 64 3200 plus 2 gigahertz. In the not original packaging. So we got a lot of random CPUs just hanging around. We got what else we got here? There's some random stuff in here, man. Like there's this thing is just hanging out over here. I like the packaging on this Intel Core i7. I like this, like, what is this thing? There's like a brain. There's like a human with a brain right here. Like, that is from something. It's from something. There's like, what does this say? What? It says, what will you make? What will you make? And then we've got, obviously, FX 8350, which we showcased earlier this week. So that's just hanging out with a very high-end tin can. There's another random, there's like some random Ryzen just hanging around. And speaking of Arrow Lake, we've got an Arrow Lake hanging around. Intel Core Ultra 9 285K. The one with the really fancy packaging with the sides cut out. Yeah, we've got one. Intel Core Ultra 9 285K, which I do plan on featuring in some upcoming content. We'll eventually, so the point that I'm making is eventually we're going to get back to DDR5. I'm not going to stay on DDR3 forever. I know that's not the end game. The end game is not to stay on DDR3. The goal is to see how viable is DDR3 for gaming in 2026. At some point, I will hit a wall where I realize, this is my assumption, that no matter what I do, DDR3 is past its prime, and it's time to throw in the towel, and it's time to upgrade. So, but I'm just trying to see how long I can hold out. The Phenom is an absolute fail. The FX 8350 put up a valiant effort, but it ultimately was defeated by modern gaming. So now there is only one that remains, and that is Haswell. Haswell and DDR3's last stand. You heard it here first. Coming to a theater near you. Anyway, eventually we're going to go into the DDR4 realm and go and focus on DDR4 CPUs and motherboards. We've got a bunch of DDR4 lined up. That's basically season 2 in this little mini series. Season 1 is DDR3, season 2 is DDR4, and then if we do a season 3, it's going to be DDR5, which it's going to get stupidly expensive builds. Like, I'm talking like really, really dumb expensive builds that require a lot of kidneys, if you know what I'm saying. But anyway, that is the roadmap for the channel, so stay tuned if you're interested. And with that, we'll get back to what we're talking about. So basically, 2026, there have been some new CPUs, new-ish CPUs, if you consider a refresh new, or if you consider a copy-pasting X3D on the other CCD new. So we have kind of gotten some new-ish kind of CPUs. But there are still technically the same generation of existing CPUs. Works incredibly with MSI Z890As. Oh wait, so you're using, hold on. You're using, okay, so you're using, okay. So you didn't get the refresh though, right? You're using the Core Ultra, not, oh, the Core Ultra 9, not the refresh. The Plus. You built a couple for fun, went on a PC building spree for a few months. I knew it was a dead platform, but I built several AMD rigs already. Core Ultra 9. Yeah, Core Ultra 9, there is one thing I want to say about Arrow Lake that I think a lot of the press didn't really get the memo on Intel's latest Core Ultra. It is actually not that bad. And I've said this before. I have stood up for Intel when it feels like everyone in the tech media has been against Intel's Arrow Lake. And I'm not talking about Arrow Lake Plus. I'm talking about the original Arrow Lake. I'm talking about the 2024 launch of the Intel Arrow Lake. There's a lot of good stuff that Intel put out there with Arrow Lake that you don't have access to on any other platform. That includes the current AM5 offerings from AMD. You don't get Thunderbolt 5. You don't get QDIMM memory, so you can't use clock redrivers. And what that means is that if you're on mobile, you don't have access to CAM2 or LP Cam. Like, those are only things that exist on Arrow Lake today. Now, will AMD eventually have access to those things? Obviously. But today, and as of last year, all of last year, Intel's Arrow Lake was kind of the only game in town if you were interested in the latest and greatest memory technology, meaning QDIMM or CUDIMM if you were on the desktop platform, or if you were on the laptop platform, you would have had CAM2. So what does this mean? New DDR5 technologies. Number 1, LP Cam. Number 2, CAM2 or LP Cam2. Number 3, QDIMM. All of these things are fundamentally based off of the same thing. So all of these things are basically the same thing. So if your CPU can support QDIMM, it means it can support CAM2. Or if LP Cam, it can support QDIMM. So Arrow Lake has had support for all of these things since 2024. No one seems to look at the positives of this platform. Everyone seems to just say, oh, it loses in gaming. It's useless. It's a waste of sand. Don't buy it. AMD's better. AMD's better in gaming. Do you game? Gaming. Gaming performance. Gamers. Gamer for life, gamers, gaming, X3D, gaming, gamers. Are you a gamer? Do you game? Do you play MMOs, multiplayer gaming, live service, Xbox, game? Oh, AMD makes consoles. Gaming, AMD X3D, gaming, gamers, gaming. So it seems like people seem to drown out everything else that a CPU can do. It's like people focus literally with binoculars on gaming. Like gaming is like the only thing. It's like, oh, what do I do with a computer? Oh, I play games. Oh, I play WoW. Oh, I play Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy, Genshin Impact, Call of Duty, Battlefield 6, GTA whenever it comes out in 2029 on PC because it's a console exclusive. Like, oh, gamers, streaming, gaming. So it's like, what about, I don't know, productivity or overclocking memory or overclocking in general, like, or just enthusiast basic things like the fun of actually owning the hardware and toying with the hardware and just tweaking it. A lot of that. To AMD's credit, AMD has done a very good job at extracting 98 to 99% of all of the performance day one, like out of the box, to the point where overclocking an AMD CPU is actually kind of boring. Like, there's not a lot of stuff that you do. You go, like, the name of the game is to, like, undervolt to try to get better boost behavior. Like, personally, as someone who used to overclock FX 8350, Haswell, I mean, hello, we're talking about like retro CPUs. As someone who used to overclock Phenom, Haswell, Black Edition Phenom, FX 8350. This is probably the king of overclockers because you could overclock this thing to 5 gigahertz very successfully if you knew what you were doing. Yeah, as someone who used to do what I call true overclocking Ryzen for the past couple of generations now is not really that enthusiastic. It's not really that fun. It's kind of like overclocking a GeForce graphics card. It's like you're raising sliders. It's like you're basically sliding the curve optimizer to see if you won the golden ticket for Silicon Lottery and you have a super duper undervolter. You know what I'm saying? It's like kind of weird the way overclocking works in the modern day. But Intel Core Ultra, it's like, oh, you want to overclock on Intel now? Oh, guess what? You need a PhD because there's a whole bunch of knobs. But if you're an enthusiast, you might actually like having all those knobs because if you want to overclock on Intel Core Ultra 9, you have to understand new concepts a new vocabulary that you've never heard before. Things like the NGU and the ring bus and the different zones, the different tile interfaces. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that you got to figure out how to do. So the overclocking on Intel can feel more daunting initially, but it is actually in a weird way more rewarding once you figure it out. So I don't know. I kind of think Arrow Lake got a bad rap because of, I don't know, gamers and gaming. But the thing is, it's not a bad CPU. It's not a bad CPU. But the unfortunate reality is apparently nothing in the world matters for desktop PCs except gaming. Like gaming, you have to win in gaming. Apparently, you have to win in gaming. It's like AMD learned that hard lesson years ago when they launched, oh, I don't know, the original Ryzen, and it was such good multi-thread and such good value. But then it's like, oh, you look at the gaming benchmarks, it's like, oh, Intel still wins in gaming, so I'm just gonna buy Intel because Intel won in gaming. It's like the the Ryzen 7 2700X Zen Plus is such good value, but the Intel i7 8700K is still a little bit faster in gaming. Therefore, I'll get that, even though it loses in multi-thread and a lot of other things like streaming. So, but it's like, okay, whatever. So it's kind of like the roles have seen a reversal since X3D. When X3D came out, I'll never forget this, man. When the 5800 X3D came out, 5800 X3D launched in like spring 2022. When this CPU literally broke the internet when it came to the gamers. Like, you have no idea. Maybe you do know, but when the 5800 X3D came out in the spring of 2022, so that was like 4 years ago, when this CPU came out, I knew a bunch of people that played this one game called Star Citizen. There's a game out there that parades around as a game in alpha, but it's almost like the game will never be a public released game. But anyway, it's called Star Citizen. I don't know if you guys have heard of this thing, but it's called Star Citizen. And when the 5800 X3D came out, the entire population of people that played this game called Star Citizen literally flipped out of their minds, because this CPU was, up until the 5800 X3D, there was no CPU in the world that could play Star Citizen at a constant 60 plus FPS smooth experience. There was no CPU in the world that could handle Star Citizen. Not even like an uber overclocked i9 12900K. Not even the 12900K could handle Star Citizen back in the day. Then all of a sudden, this 5800 X3D just shows up, and it's like, oh my goodness, there's a CPU that can maintain above 60 FPS in the city? In Star Citizen? What? The ramifications of that moment, that was like the moment that the Chernobyl, like, disaster happened, and it's like the shockwave just like rang out, like boom, like bam, all of a sudden, boom, you see all the glass just shatter, all the gamers. First it was the Star Citizen gamers, then it was the other people who play like other MMOs that are also CPU bound, like Black Desert and all those Korean MMOs. And it's like everybody all of a sudden, oh my goodness, there's this one. It's like word of mouth marketing started going around through Discords. People start hearing about whims of the return of this one CPU. Hey, have you heard about that one CPU out there? There's a CPU out there that can play Star Citizen above 60 FPS in the city. Can you believe that? Like, what? Wait, what? Star Citizen for real? Like, what? Yeah, and it's super good at GTA as well. It can play GTA. It removes all the GTA bottlenecks. Hey, you know that there's this one CPU out there that can play Skyrim above 60 FPS with maxed out mods, loading up all the system RAM, and it still stays above 60. Like, these things caught like wildfire. It spread like wildfire when the CPU came out. There's a reason why X3D has the reputation it has. It's not because of marketing hype and like reviewers. No, people figured it out pretty quick that this CPU is some special sauce. So it came out in spring of 2022, so it's 4 years old, which is hilarious because the original Zen 3 was 2020. Pandemic. 5800X was 2020, guys. Like, whoa. Like a year and a half later, it's like this one CPU somehow discovered the meaning of life and became a Super Saiyan 4 before even knowing how to become Super Saiyan. It's like, whoa, Ultra Instinct? Like, what is this? So, I don't know. Ever since that moment, Intel has had a harder time to maintain their reputation in the enthusiast space when it comes to gaming on a desktop. Because, I mean, there are other CPUs that can there's a lot of CPUs today that outperform the 5800X 3D in gaming. You know, obviously the Zen 4 and the Zen 5 X3D CPUs are faster than it. But even some of the Intel CPUs are also faster than the 5800X 3D. Now, how do they manage to do that? DDR5, memory bandwidth. That's the answer. But the fact that you can take a CPU that is gimped, meaning it's stuck on DDR4, it can't get the sort of memory bandwidth that DDR5 provides, and yet it can still get the sort of gaming performance that it can do. That is some pretty impressive stuff, and that's kind of the secret to the success of the X3D. So, why am I talking about this? Well, because we're gonna see this CPU come back. I mean, that's another the returns of the king, returns of this thing. And there's also another CPU, the 7700X3D. I'm not really that enthusiastic about the 7700X3D. I don't understand the purpose of this one, to be honest. But anyway, these are kind of like the new-ish, if you can call them new. I mean, they're not really new, but you can buy them brand new. And then later in the year, there's going to be some really interesting stuff. Very, very interesting stuff. So there's going to be something called Core Ultra X series. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave it at that. Coming soon in Q4. Core Ultra X is coming. The Omen. It's coming. So, these are kind of what we can look forward to for new platforms. We'll just say this is going to be called LGA 1954, I think? 1954. Core Ultra X, LGA 1954. So there is a new CPU generation brewing, coming soon. And what I can say, I'm not going to be able to say too much about it, but what I can say from, what is the guy's name? Robert Halleck. He knows. I mean, he's part of the whole planning of the roadmap for Core Ultra. But he knows because he was there when the X3D was being developed. So he knows. But now we all know that he is at Intel now. So he knows what it takes to win the hearts of the gamers. Now, Intel, I'm not worried about Intel, even though it appears, at least to the untrained eye, that Intel is in trouble. But Intel, in fact, is not in trouble at all. Intel is in a very strong position right now. And they're going to be in an even stronger position later this year. I'll just leave it at that. But Intel still has the leverage of their ecosystem partners. They still push a lot of volume of their Core Ultra chips into the market via system pre-builds. So there's no reason to feel sorry for or worry about Intel's future. Intel, I mean, heck, the US government gave them a bunch of money. So it's whoa. So free money, right? So yeah, I mean, they're not gonna go away anytime soon. They're gonna survive. They're gonna get their act together. They already are getting their act together, to be honest. If you look at some of the stuff that they've already put out last year and this year in the mobile space, that's kind of a preview of what's to come. So, Intel Strikes Back is really a true thing that is going to occur real soon. But one thing, so I need to close out the poll. I noticed people are changing the voting on the Arrow Lake. Arrow Lake Refresh is not this, guys. So if you're thinking this is Arrow Lake Refresh, no. Arrow Lake Refresh, if you didn't already know, is this. is the thing that's already out today. Arrow Lake Refresh. The thing that's coming out in the fall is something called Nova Lake. And this is the one to remember. This is the one to be watching out for, because this is something special. So what did I say 2026 would repeat? 2026 would basically be a repeat, when it comes to Intel at least. 2026 equals 2021. So if you watch my streams, if you're familiar with my format for live streams, when we make these CPU discussions, you probably already know where this is going. But we like to make comparisons to the past, because you can use the past to predict the future. You really can, with a good deal of accuracy. And everything is playing out exactly like it should. So 2026 equals 2021 from an Intel roadmap standpoint. What do I mean by that? We could also say, to a lesser degree, 2026, 2021 equals 2017. Intel likes to do these things. Intel can repeat certain patterns. How do I know this? Because I understand how companies work. That's why I can say these things with full confidence that I know I'm correct. So 2026 equals 2021. 2021 equals 2017. So you have to unpack that. What do I mean when I say 2026 equals 2021 from an Intel roadmap standpoint? If we look at 2017, in 2017, what happened? In Q1, Intel launched. Hold on, I need to move something over here out of the way. I want to check one thing. Yeah. Okay. So in Q1, Intel launched something called 7th Gen Kaby Lake. 7th Gen Kaby Lake. This was known as the i7 7700K. 7700K. And then what happened? Then AMD launches Zen 1, aka Ryzen launches plus GTX 1080 Ti. But that's anecdotal information that doesn't really contribute to what we're talking about. So AMD launched Zen 1 a couple of months. It was like March. Kaby Lake launched in like January/February. But then in March, AMD goes and launches Zen 1, the initial launch of Ryzen, and they make a big splash, and they get a lot of media talking about it, because it's like, oh, AMD's back. AMD's back, guys. They actually have something. You can finally upgrade from Bulldozer now, or Pile Driver, or Excavator, or Steamroller, or whatever construction equipment that you're tired of using. So they launched a bunch of AMD Zen 1 CPUs, and they got a lot of attention. But ultimately, the Kaby Lake maintained gaming leadership. It still won in gaming. But in one area that it was lacking, where AMD outperformed it, was in multi-thread. And literally the pure amount of value per dollar in terms of how many cores you could get. So Intel had a plan. When Intel needs to make a strong response to a competitor, they have a pattern here. So they launched something. They launched something in Q4 of that year called the 8th Gen. This was known as Coffee Lake. And this would be known as the famous or infamous i7 8700K. This was Intel's first 6-core 12-thread consumer mainstream dual-channel DDR4 platform. This was a first. This was an industry first for Intel. But they couldn't claim first to 6-core in consumer because, you know, we're not talking HEDT, because AMD managed to claim that position. Now, AMD tried to claim that position with FX with, oh, we got an 8-core clustered multi-threading, but we all know how that kind of played out. But AMD definitely had the one-up over Intel on the core count from consumer desktop. Now, Intel did have 8 cores, but you were buying basically an Intel Threadripper platform. You were paying that Threadripper money if you wanted an 8-core from Intel. It wasn't until the following year where Intel released the world's first i9 9900K. That was when Intel finally brought a true 8-core to the mainstream desktop platform outside of HEDT. And that's when they also, just like AMD, they started cannibalizing their HEDT sales by doing that. That's kind of why they didn't want to do that. But AMD basically opened Pandora's box and threw caution to the wind. But then, of course, AMD went and put out Threadripper to try to compensate for that. But both AMD and Intel kind of started eating away at the traditional HEDT market by doing that. So this is 2017. So now let's talk about, let's delete this. Now let's talk about 2021, because remember I said 2026 equals 2021 equals 2017. So where am I going with this? So now let's discuss 2021. Ah, yes, the second year of the pandemic. The year of the Newegg shuffle and crypto mining and all the people buying up GPUs and making everybody's lives miserable, at least gamers' lives miserable, or PC enthusiasts, because you had to go through Newegg Shuffle and the John Travolta meme streams to figure out when it was time to buy a GPU. Yeah, that was 2021, if you forgot, if you could ever forget. So what happened in 2021? In 2021, I got to get the dates correct on this, because I forget this. I always forget this one. Hold on, let me make sure I'm giving you guys the right info. Okay, I was right. So, again, Q1, Intel launched something infamous. What was it? Let's close this poll. You don't remember what generation they were. It's Devil's Canyon is 4th gen refresh. That's Haswell refresh. That's the i7-4790K. That is actually the refresh of this CPU. This CPU is the 2013 original. Devil's Canyon is the 2014 refresh of this, also known as 4790K. Just FYI. That was a DDR3 CPU. That was the pinnacle of DDR3 CPUs, by the way. Okay. So Q1, I don't know, is anybody, have I put everybody to sleep? Is anybody awake? Is anybody awake? Does anybody know what happened in Q1 of 2021 besides Newegg Shuffle and fix it to buy a GPU? And no, I'm not talking about 3080 Ti. I'm not talking about 3080 Ti. Yes, the 3080 Ti happened in Q1 of 2021, but that's not what we're talking about. 1080. 1080 what? 1080? In 2021? No. There was something called 11th gen. 11th gen. Codenamed Rocket Lake. Launched Q1 2021. Okay, Mark, I can tell you have learned the patterns. You have learned the patterns, my friend, because you know exactly where we're going with this. Yes, double release indeed. So 11th gen launches, and what ends up happening? Everyone starts calling it, the reviewers start calling it a waste of sand, a waste of silicon, garbage, bottom barrel, terrible CPU, horribly inefficient, regression, gaming regression, multi-thread regression, performance regression. It loses in gaming, regression, 10th gen's faster, 10th gen's faster, 10th gen has better multi-thread, AMD's better in gaming, AMD wins in gaming, Intel's 10th gen beats 11th gen, Intel loses to itself. These were the headlines, guys. These are the headlines of what happened with the 11th gen when it launched in Q1 of 2021 in the midst of the global pandemic, supply shortages, Newegg shuffles, and people being unable to buy RTX 30 series and PS5s. That is the sort of environment that the 11th gen entered the world in. So it was basically set up to fail. It was basically set up to fail. No matter what it did, it felt like the entire world hated it for some reason. And when everybody tends to like run the other way from this thing, that's the CPU that always seems to get me interested in it. When everybody calls it a waste of sand, oh, now I want to buy it. Now I want one of those. When Gamers Nexus called it a waste of sand, go find the review. You'll find the thumbnail, waste of sand, 11th gen review from Gamers Nexus. When they call it a waste of sand, oh man, now I want to buy one. It's like you're not really detracting me from wanting to buy it by calling it a waste of sand, man. I'm just saying. So it's like now I'm actually more interested in it than I should be. So Rocket Lake was very interesting, to say the least, because Rocket Lake was an example of what happens when you're forced to make the best with what you're given. Like if you're dealt a bad hand, you try to make the best of it. You try to salvage the situation. So what happened with 11th gen? What was the good thing about the Rocket Lake? Who here can tell me tell me a positive thing about Rocket Lake? What did it do well? Does anybody know? What are its positives? No. Lower power consumption was not one of its positives. It actually used more energy. So no, that's incorrect. No. So who here can tell me at least give me two things? Colors? What? You're thinking of the first one in the new... What? Rocket Lake. Okay, first of all, Rocket Lake, for those that forgot, Rocket Lake is 14 nanometer. I gotta think this through. Hold on. Broadwell, Skylake, Cabby Lake, Coffee Lake Plus, Comet Lake, Rocket Lake. Plus. This is 14 nanometer plus. So this is what we're talking about. Okay, so Death got one. Oh, there we go. There's a positive. AVX 512. Yes, it did full fat AVX 512. Okay, so here's another thing it did. Intel's first PCIe 4.0. So finally, after almost 2 years, Intel finally caught up to AMD with PCIe 4.0, because people on AMD had PCIe 4.0 since 2019 with Zen 2 and X570. So basically, Ryzen 3000 already had PCIe 4.0. So Intel was stuck for some weird reason on PCI 3.0 from from the year 2012, from 2012 all the way to 2021. 9 years. 9 years. Intel was stuck on PCI 3.0. Now, I'm not trying to say that that's incompetent, because if you look at the record, just to set the record straight, AMD didn't get PCI 3.0 until I think it was like Steamroller or Excavator in their APU lineup, which was like 2014, 13, somewhere in there. So Intel had PCI 3.0 before AMD had PCI 3.0. But AMD definitely beat Intel to PCI 4.0 by like 2 years. Like 2 generations. Like, let's look at this. So let's zoom in here. Double click on this, as they say. So Zen 2 equal PCIe 4.0. This is a 2019 product. This is pre-pandemic. What did you get from Intel in 2019? Oh, absolutely nothing. What did you get from Intel in 2020? The next CPU was 10th gen Intel PCIe 3.0. And then you had, in 2020, you had Zen 3, which is Ryzen 5000. The very famous 5000 series was 4.0 as well. So Intel didn't get... Intel basically allowed AMD to get like two U-arches of Gen 4 before they finally got Gen 4. But Intel did get Gen 4 with 11 Gen. So yeah, 2021, 11 Gen, PCIe 4.0. So 2 years later, Intel now finally has platform parity with AMD when it comes to PCI bandwidth. Which is good, because I believe the RTX 30 series, yeah, that's right, RTX 30 series was PCI 4.0. That means if you had an RTX 3090 and you paired it up with a Comet Lake Intel, you were bottlenecking your 3090 at Gen 3 speeds. Versus if you had like a 3950X or a 3800X or a 5800X or a 5950X, whatever. Like if you were on AMD 3000 or AMD 5000, you already had full bandwidth for that RTX 3090. I mean, assuming you could even get an RTX 3090 during the pandemic when no one could buy anything. But anyway, so that's kind of a historical there to set the record on who was actually first. So you had this scenario where Intel caught up. So now it's like, okay, now we're equal. I'm trying to think, there was like a third thing that I was thinking of. Oh. So one of the things that it added that no one mentioned. The third thing that I would say is Intel introduced Gear 1 and Gear 2 memory ratios. They introduced the concept of gear ratios. So we'll just say that. 11th Gen introduced new overclocking techniques that the world had never, or I shouldn't say techniques, overclocking tools that never existed before. One of them was the idea of Gear 1 and Gear 2 for DDR4. And the other thing, the fourth thing, is thermal velocity boost, or TVB. This is another overclocking technique, or it is, well, I shouldn't say overclocking. You use it alongside overclocking if you're overclocking an Intel CPU. But the 11th Gen introduced these things. So the 11th gen introduced some pretty cool techniques for enthusiasts to get more performance out of their system that never existed before. So you got the practical things like PCI 4.0, so it finally caught up to AMD in that regard, and AVX 512. That was kind of cool for the two applications out there in the real world that actually use 512 instructions for everyday consumer workloads. This is more of a server thing, which is kind of the reason why Intel scaled that back with their later generations. But they had to make do with they were dealt a bad hand and they had to make the best of it. And so their engineers thought up some pretty cool stuff: thermal velocity boost, gear ratios, bring in AVX 512, get Gen 4 out the door. Make the best out of that nanometer plus. Eke out everything you can, because there's no going back. So that's what I remember about the 11th gen. So it's kind of very similar to what we see today, actually, with Arrow Lake refresh. You could think of like thermal velocity boost back then. Nowadays, I mean, you still have access to it with Arrow Lake, but what is the new thing that they introduced with Arrow Lake Plus? Well, now you have the boost. You have 200S boost. That's something that's kind of new. So they've introduced some little tweaks and things to try to improve certain aspects of the chiplet design or the tile-based design with the Arrow Lake Plus, and it kind of has an 11th gen vibe in that regard. So, but okay, well, what happened? What happened in 2021? Something else happened in 2021, and it happened in Q4 of 2021. So if you were somebody who was on the fence, you saw the reviews for the 11th gen Rocket Lake, and it's like, if it's one of those like those RPGs, you got to make a decision that influences what ending you get in the game. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a Mass Effect dialogue choice, and it's like the choices are like A. It's like A, choose to buy 11th gen. It's like choose to buy 11th gen. B, buy AMD Zen 3 instead. Or C, don't buy anything and wait it out. Or D, none of the above. Or E, all of the above. So there's a couple of interesting choices here. It's like you could either buy, actually, no, get rid of none of the above. Buy 10th gen for some reason. Like, I guess that was the other choice. So, but anyway, so there's one of the choices in here. C, don't buy anything and wait it out. Probably, if you're somebody who chose I guess if you chose B, it's okay, because B had an upgrade path at that point. But you wouldn't see that until the following year. But and then you would have already spent the money. So maybe, I don't know. So C is kind of the interesting one, because something happened in Q4 of that year. Something interesting happened in 2021 Q4. Intel decided to do something very similar to what they did in 2017. And Mark said it earlier. They did something called a double launch. What that means is that within one fiscal year, well, actually, I don't know if it's within one fiscal year. It depends on when their fiscal year ends, because sometimes the fiscal year might end in the summer. So, I don't know. Depending on that, regardless of what I said on the fiscal year stuff, they did a double launch in a calendar year. So they went and they launched something called 12th Gen. 12th Gen. 12th Gen was codenamed Alder Lake. And this thing was special. This thing was unique. This thing had things that no one had ever even fathomed before. It's like all of a sudden you've come in contact with an alien life form. You have no idea what's going on. This thing's got some special techniques. It's like when Goku first saw Tien, some people have the ability to levitate. You know, like, whoa, how'd you learn how to do that? Whoa, you can do that? All of a sudden, Intel finally got the node shrink. They finally got the 10 nanometer node, or what they call Intel 7, as Pat Gelsinger called it, Intel 7. Finally, the long-awaited new node arrived. It arrived late in style, the way Goku arrived late in the Saiyan saga, and by the time he got there, Piccolo died and everyone else had just died. It was just Krillin and Gohan. But you know what I'm saying? Like, 12th Gen showed up, and like everybody almost tapped out because it was like, whoa, man, you showed up so late. I forgot what happened. Like, I forgot this was a hobby. So Alder Lake shows up, and it introduced some cool things. Some very unique things. What were those things? Who here remembers? I keep forgetting to change the color. P-Core. E-Core. This was the first CPU from Intel to introduce the concept of E-cores. E-cores. Efficiency cores. What else? Correct. PCIe 5. It was that Toy Story 1 moment where Woody's like, Buzz, you missed the truck. And he's like, I'm not aiming for the truck. So it's like, hey, Intel, you got PCI 4.0, right? With 11th gen? And like, I ain't aiming for PCI 4.0. No, I'm going beyond. We're going PCI 5.0. Like, we literally just launched in 1 year. Can you believe that? In 1 year, Intel launched PCIe 4.0 and then immediately double launched with PCIe 5.0. Like, what the heck? Like, wait, what? Intel had PCIe 4.0 as a new platform for like literally less than a year. Because they were on Gen 3 since 2012. Intel 3rd Gen Ivy Bridge introduced PCIe 3.0. And then it was 3.0, 4th gen, 5th gen, 6th gen, 7th gen, 8th gen, 9th gen, 10th gen. All of a sudden, 11th gen, PCIe 4.0. Then 12th gen immediately shows up like 6 months later. 12th gen, bam, PCIe 5.0. Let's just skip. Let's just skip Gen 4. Just completely skip it. Gen 4. It would be hilarious. Well, I don't know. It would be very embarrassing. They had to do PCIe 4.0 on 11th gen. Otherwise, it would be very embarrassing if it was still PCIe Gen 3. But that would be hilarious. Can you imagine if 11th gen never had 4.0 and then 12th gen comes out and then has 5.0? Like, can you imagine if Intel like never had a platform that had PCIe 4.0 as its highest spec like interconnect speed? That would be kind of weird. It was like Gen 3, 10th gen, 11th gen, and then all of a sudden, like, Gen 5? Wait, what? What happened to Gen 4? You know? Oh, Gen 4 is like an AMD thing. It's like, wait, what? So, but anyway, so that's kind of interesting. I never actually thought about that way, that Intel literally launched 2 generations of PCIe. Like, PCIe 4.0 was so short-lived on Intel's platform. Very, very interesting stuff. And then what was the other thing that was cool about this? Z690. We'll get back to that in a second. Other thing, DDR4 and DDR5 compatible. This is probably the most ingenious feature of the 12th gen. The fact that the memory controller is backwards and forwards compatible with two different generations of DDR5. It's like it's bilingual. It can speak in Spanish, it can speak in Espanol, and it can speak in English. So it has both capabilities. Bilingual DDR4E, DDR5. So think about that for a second. Like, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? Like, whoa, man. Whoa, this thing can do DDR4 and DDR5? Consumer choice? Now, getting back to Z690. Why am I circling Z690? What is so great about Z690? Why is Z690 so important? Z690 commands, well, select boards command the highest resale value on the market. Z690. Z690 select boards command the highest resale value on the market. This is a detail that I think most enthusiasts have glossed over and have completely skipped, because there's a feature here. It's a kind of a niche feature. We'll talk about it later in the stream. Z690, also known as the last chipset to support something from NVIDIA. It is the last chipset to support blank from NVIDIA. Does anybody know what I'm referring to? This is why this will command the highest resale value of all modern motherboards. Z6, there you go. There you go. You guys got it. SLI. SLI and NV, more importantly, NVLink. For historical reasons, SLI, but more importantly, NVLink. NVLink. There are certain Z690, we talked about this yesterday, that's why. So those of you who tuned in yesterday, congratulations, because you understand what we're talking about. This multi-GPU, specifically NVIDIA's SLI, and their much newer NV and shortly lived, at least on consumer, NVLink protocol exists in some rare and very expensive Z690 enthusiast motherboards. So this is the reason why Z690 will command much, much higher resale value than Z790 or Z890 or a lot of the AM5 motherboards even. Because, well, I guess we'll leave that there. SLI / NVLink top out in the consumer world when it comes to AMD, X570 DDR4. That's the end. There are no AMD Ryzen motherboards newer than AM4 that support SLI. There are no AM5 motherboards, zero, nothing, that support SLI and NVLink. So you cannot do NVLink on AM5. Likewise, if you got that 14900K and you got unfortunately you went and got a Z790 because you had no other choice, or because some random person told you that Z790 is better than Z690, well, guess what? Unfortunately, you have no hope to get access to SLI because there are none Z790 that support SLI or NVLink. Only Z690 has this capability. That is where it ends. So for AMD, it ends in the DDR4 world. Multi-GPU is dead after DDR4. It ends with DDR4 on AMD. With Intel, however, Z690, DDR5, this is the reason why the Z690 boards will command the highest resale value, because it gives you the ability to upgrade all the way to a 14900KS 14th gen flagship and get access to NVLink on a DDR5 platform. The pinnacle of a almost forgotten technology among gamers and enthusiasts alike. This is the pinnacle of Z690, and this is probably one of the best things and often overlooked capabilities of the 12th gen Alder Lake launch. So this is what I mean by Alder Lake was something special. A lot of people overlooked it, mainly because DDR5 was so expensive when 12th gen launched. And it's so funny, it's ironic looking back upon it now, thinking, man, I remember DDR5 launched with Alder Lake, and I remember when 64 gigs of DDR5 5600 was $800. $800. So what is it now? I'm curious to know what it actually costs now. Let's see. Let's go here. Desktop memory. DDR5. 64 gigs. It's actually, oh, hold on, that's DDR4. Yeah, DDR4. We have to filter DDR5 5600. Oh, okay, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more today per Micro Center. Oh, you guys aren't seeing it. Hold on. Where did I do with that? What did I do with that? There it is. So look at that. When DDR5 launched with 12th gen in Q4 2021, memory kits like this Corsair Vengeance, DDR5 5600, because DDR5 5600 was like the highest end stuff you could get back then. You were typically buying DDR5 4800 or DDR5 5200. But you could get DDR5 5600. This is like the flagship stuff. And if you're really lucky, you might find a DDR5 6000 for over $1,200 back in the day. But if you're doing this, it was $799. I literally, do I have the, I don't have it with me here to show you guys, but I have the thing with the sticker. $799 for DDR5 5600, 64 gigs, 2x32 in fall 2021. And it's crazy to think that after all this time, the price prohibitive DDR5 at launch has come full circle, and now it actually exceeded it, because this is actually technically more expensive than it was at DDR5 launch. So that is ironic indeed that this is what the reality is now. But looking at this, 12th gen was special, and if you're someone who was a super enthusiast for SLI, the final motherboards for SLI, last call for NVLink and SLI, Z690 is where it's at. And that gave you an upgrade path. You could go from 12th gen to 14th gen, 14900K with SLI NVLink capability on that motherboard. And that's DDR5 bandwidth too. So that's really nice. That's probably one of the few talked about things or benefits of the 12th gen platform launch. So here we are in 2026, and we are about to relive history in a time where so far we have experienced the reincarnation of 11th gen earlier this year with the Q1 launch of the Arrow Lake refresh. Arrow Lake refresh equals Rocket Lake. And Rocket Lake wasn't all bad. It had some interesting things. We've talked about that, just like how the Arrow Lake refresh has some interesting things, like the boost and stuff like that, the improvements out of the box. So it's not all bad. And it has a very good price. It's very, very price competitive. I'll say that. There's no denying that. But I can't help but think that there is something else coming later this year. And it is going to be unique. History repeats itself. Companies follow very, very predictable roadmaps. Unless something terrible happens, and so far nothing like that has happened. So Intel's on track, guys. I think we're going to have a winner on our hands with this upcoming Nova Lake. I've got a feeling. And we have the patterns. We have the patterns to prove it. So we'll see if I'm right. You forget Zen 6. So, okay. Let's talk about AMD now. So Zen 6 is kind of weird because I have no idea when Zen 6 is coming out. I know when Intel's Nova Lake, I know when Nova Lake's coming out. I'm not going to say when it's coming out exactly, but I know when it's coming out. So I'm very, very confident on Intel's release cycle. But Zen 6, I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. AMD has kind of broken some of their typical patterns. And it's almost like I have a crystal ball and I can like figure out when these things are going to play out. But AMD has been able to evade me like surprisingly well, to be honest, in terms of like I have no idea their GPU roadmap. I don't know when they plan to bring out their new RDNA, the successor to the 7900 XTX, because they desperately need a successor to 7900 XTX. With all these announcements of backporting, like Int 8 based upscaling, which is all great for FSR4 and AMD's existing user base, but the thing is, like, where's their new stuff, man? Like, where's the new Radeons? Where's the new, like, Zen 6? We know Zen 6 is coming. The problem is we don't know when Zen 6 is coming because there are some certain unknown variables that we need to discuss when it comes to AMD, which is the reason why it's become harder to predict with accuracy with these guys, because they have to buy chips from TSMC for everything, and that's kind of the problem, and that's actually the reason why it's harder to predict, because Zen 6 is now shipping in data center. It's not like out in the market in volume yet, but it will be available to data center to AI customers first in the EPYC CPUs. So AMD is really prioritizing data center, AI factory, AI this, AI that. So it is kind of hard to predict what they're going to do for consumer, because I feel like consumer has become like the group that gets served second. So Zen 6 will be available to data center customers, but I don't know what that means for consumers. Like, I don't know what that means for people who build their own computers, because yeah, I don't know. The fact that they're bringing back the 5800X 3D for the 10th anniversary, even though it's literally 9 years of Ryzen, I'm not sure why they're calling it 10th anniversary. That doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest. Because the 58, first of all, the 50, it doesn't make any sense from the point of view of the 5800X 3D, because the 5800X 3D, just saying, 5800X 3D launched 2022, you know, like AMD kind of did a double launch in that year because Zen 4 was also 2022, but that was like second half 2022, and 5800 XDD was first half 2022. So yeah, I'm not sure why they're calling it 10th anniversary, because if you're talking like Ryzen in general launched 2017. Since when does 2026, 2017 to 2026, if I do the math on that, I'm coming out to 9 years? How is that a 10-year anniversary? I mean, internally for them, they're considering it 10 years because they were ready to go in 2016. But the public didn't have access to it then, so it's like, how can you call it a 10-year anniversary? In the public side, it's not 10-year anniversary. So I'm confused. Like, I don't understand that. It's like from both aspects. 5800X3D ain't no 10-year-old CPU, and Ryzen as a brand is technically 9 years old. So it's like, I don't know the whole 10-year anniversary thing, but the fact that they're bringing back an old CPU, to me, it kind of means that Zen 6 is probably not coming this year. Although I could be wrong. I don't know. They start from 2016. Yeah, internally, but you couldn't buy a AM4 CPU in 2016. Like, there was no Ryzen CPU in 2016. I mean, I know because I bought Zen 1 on launch day in March of 2017. That's how I know. I was there in line at Micro Center with all those people that were also buying Ryzen and a bunch of other people that were also in line to buy the GTX 1080 Ti because it launched the same time. A lot of people forget that Zen 1 and the 1080 Ti are the same age. That gives you an idea of how old these things are. They're both 9 years old, not 10 years old. What's 10 years old is the GTX 1080 and 1070. Those are 10 years old. So yeah, man. I don't know. I mean, I literally got the box to prove it. It's like, I was there. I remember. It's like I was there in the Clone Wars. You know, on the battlefield with Yoda. I saw it. I saw it. I was there. You know, I know. So it's 9 years ago, man. Not 10 years. 9 years. Anyway, um, yeah. So 12th gen was really cool, man. 12th gen was really cool. In fact, I hyped up 12th gen so much like a salesperson just now that we're bringing back 12700K. Okay, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do some content featuring 12700K before the end of this whole thing. We will be doing 12700K. It's literally on the table over there behind me. Just spoiler alert: 12700K is coming back. But yeah, Alder Lake. I don't know. Maybe we'll bring back Rocket Lake. Hold on. Let's do a poll. Let's do a poll. Or do we? Yeah, let's do this. Okay. Do you want to see the 11th gen CPU tested on live stream? Similar to what we did yesterday. Do you want to see Intel's 11th gen in action, real-time testing, gaming, and streaming? Because we haven't actually done that. I just realized that. I mean, I've used the 11th gen a couple of times for like benchmark videos, but I've never actually used it in front of the audience before. 11th gen Rocket Lake. Okay, people are voting yes. 12th gen is coming back no matter what. Like, you guys don't need to vote for 12th gen. It's coming back, guaranteed. But 11th gen is the one I'm trying to see. Because the reason why I'm doing the poll is because if people don't care to see it, I mean, I'm not going to waste everybody's time. I don't think 11th gen was a failed launch. I think 11th gen was an okay product. It just there was too many. It was set up to fail. It launched in the pandemic when no one could buy anything. Everyone was mad. No one liked Newegg Shuffle. People didn't like those trackers to try to figure out when you could buy a GPU, like an RTX 3090 or 3080 or whatever, or even like a 6900 XT or a PS5 or a Series X. That was the sort of environment that the 11th gen launched into. Now, granted, the Ryzen 5000 Zen 3 launched into a similar environment, but the funny thing about Ryzen launched during the winter season, like fall winter of 2020. The 11th gen launched in Q1, which is like winter. Like it's like, like March, which is a time when it's like a slow time for spending. So it was really kind of thrown out there to fail. I mean, I shouldn't say fail. It was kind of thrown out there to see how the public would perceive it. And obviously the reviewers trashed it. I think in some cases kind of unfairly, to be honest. Like, I always try to see, when everybody says everything bad about something, I always try to see what's the good thing about it. And it had some pretty good qualities. So if you guys are interested in it, we will feature the 11th gen CPU. I gotta go find my Z590 motherboard. Because that's the thing about Intel, man. Like, every time I want to show you guys like an Intel, it is so much more work to set up a live stream for an Intel CPU, because I can't just pop out the CPU and put in the other CPU. I literally have to go and dig out the motherboard from the storage and then make sure I have the correct memory type. So, I mean, yeah, that's one of the benefits of AMD, because it's like AM4, what do we need? 1800X, 3800X, 5800X. I mean, we got it. You don't have to change the motherboard, you don't have to change the memory, you don't have to do anything. You just take out the cooler, put the CPU in, bam, done. Intel's got to go find the motherboard, go find this, which chipset was it? Z590, Z690. What is it? DDR4, DDR5, which one? So it's way more work. Way more work. All right, so no, I think enough people voted. 11 people voted, 11th gen, so we are going to be showcasing 11th gen in a future live stream. Because now I'm actually kind of interested in that, because 11th gen caps out at DDR4. 11 gen, actually no, I'm technically Intel like 14th gen can do DDR4. But see, that's one of the cool things about Intel's LGA 1700. The cool thing about it was that backwards and forwards compatibility. So it did have a pretty good run. I will say 12 through 14 was a pretty good run. Pretty good run. All things considered, one of the negatives of Arrow Lake is literally like no upgrade path. You're basically stuck. I mean, you have Arrow Lake and you have Arrow Lake Refresh, which is basically just Arrow Lake with some enhancements. Enhancements that you could also do to the base Arrow Lake. So it's like, yeah, man, one generation, one socket, one generation. Man, I'm thinking of something from some movie, like one name, one generation, one socket, one CPU, the one everything. That's it. That's the marketing for the Arrow Lake. That's literally the marketing for Arrow Lake. It's the one. It has the one socket, one motherboard, one CPU. That's it. But yeah, I'm pretty hyped up. Nova Lake is probably going to be really, really good, guys. Nova Lake is probably going to be really, really good. Good things come to those who wait. I'll put it that way. Curious if they are ramping back up on motherboards for this. Wonder if they... That's the other weird thing, like, I look at all these people who are like all hyped up about 5800X 3D, but I'm thinking like, I feel like this CPU is meant for people who already have AM4, but that's kind of how it felt when it first launched 4 years ago. Because it's hard to get super hyped up about 5800X 3D if you don't already have an AM4 motherboard. And it's to your point that you made, like curious if they're making new motherboards, because the motherboard, have you seen the motherboards that are available for AM4, like that are brand new? They're nothing to be enthusiastic about. They're like basic B series motherboards. Like, where's the extreme stuff? Where's that X stuff? You know what I'm talking about? Where's X570? Where's X570S? We haven't seen X570 in like forever. So I highly doubt they're gonna bring new motherboards. I don't think so. So to answer the question, or you're wondering if they are gonna add new, and I don't think so. I don't think AMD is gonna do anything in terms of new motherboards for the 5800X 3D. For all I know, Zen 3, bringing back Zen 3 is going to be like a one-time thing. I'm actually very, very surprised that they're still, like, they have enough to market out a whole nother slew of 5800X 3D. Because I would have thought that, that Zen 3 was end of life, to be honest. Because it's already, like, Zen 3 is, like, gonna be 6 years old later this year. Has anybody realized that? Has anyone noticed that? Like, okay, Zen 3, I just realized this. It just occurred to me. Zen 3 equals PS5 in age / Xbox. Xbox Series X in age. These things are literally the same age. These are like middle-aged to elderly parts in terms of electronics lifespan. Because you guys know what I say about computer hardware. So Zen 3 is like old, man. It ain't no spring chicken anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they're bringing it back? Like, what? So don't expect any new motherboards. Don't expect any new motherboards. I don't expect any new motherboards for AM4. Like, this is as old as the consoles. Like, that is old. Ryzen 5000 is as old as the consoles. Dang. What? Like, these things all launched in the pandemic when no one was going anywhere and people were buying like toilet paper from Costco, lining up outside the Costco's to buy toilet paper. You know what I'm saying? They were like later in the year, but it was the same year. It's like, what? Like, whoa, dang, this thing is old. So it's like next year we're getting PS6. PS6. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. PS6 launches November 2020. Uh-oh. I just revealed the PS6 launch month. Uh-oh. Spoiler alert. Okay, deleting it now. All right. So, Ryzen 5000, man. AM4, the gift that keeps on giving. Yeah, I guess. AM4. AM4 for the win. All I know is that my motherboard, X570, can do SLI and NVLink. So all I need is another 3090 Ti, and I can do NVLink. Yeah, I can be living in style with those dual 3090 Tis with a 5800X 3D in NVLink SLI. Ultimate style. It doesn't, I don't care what the performance is. That's not the point. The point is it's about styling. It's like someone said it like in the yesterday's live stream. SLI is nothing more than a huge flex. That's literally all it is. Let's be honest here, guys. Like, did anybody really think that the two GPUs were gonna make that much of a difference? Like, compared to one GPU of the same GPU? It's just a flex. That's all it is. So it's like 3090 Ti NVLink X570 with like 64 gigs of RAM of DDR or like 120. Well, I don't know about that, but with the 5800X 3D, man. SLI enabled. Multi GPU for the win. But yeah, I don't think there's any brand new B series motherboards that support like multi GPU. Definitely not SLI, but I'm not even talking about SLI. I'm just talking about like a motherboard that you can buy for AM4 brand new today that has dual X8 Gen 4. Cuz I don't think there's such a thing. I really don't think there's such a thing. Like if you weren't already like supporting AM4 from the get-go, or at least from like pre-pandemic 2019, or at least pandemic with Zen 3, then I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it at this point versus like saving up money to wait for newer things like Zen 6 or Nova Lake. Yeah, but I'll be honest, guys. Like, I actually know way less about um Zen 6. Like, what do I know about Zen 6? I'll tell you what I know about Zen 6. I know that Zen 6 will be out within a year. So this is what, okay. GTR's knowledge of Zen 6. Like, I'm going to tell you everything I know about Zen 6 literally right now. Up to 12 cores in a CCD, per CCD. What else do I know? I know that it will support QDIMM / LP cam / cam to all that good stuff that Intel Arrow Lake can do. Guess what? Zen 6 can do it too. So I know that much I know. What else do I know about this? It will launch within the next 12 months. All right, hold on. What month are we in? No. Hold on. 1, 2, 2. So 14 months would be next 15 months. It will launch within the next 15 months. I know that. I don't know when. I just know sometime between now and 15 months from now, Zen 6 will be available for purchase for consumers. What else do I know about it? I think that's it. I think that's all I know. I don't even know if it'll be on AM5, to be honest. If it is, great. If it's not, I don't care. Because, from my point of view, AM5 has already been around for a long time. AM5 is like 4 years old. So it's like, yeah, it could go another year. That'll be cool. It doesn't have to. I would be happy either way. Let's put it this way. If Zen 6 is on AM5, I'll be happy. If it's not on AM5, I'll still be happy. And the reason why I'll still be happy, because if it goes on a new socket, that means that AMD's engineers have more freedom to do more advanced, newer things with the motherboard, with the socket pins, versus having to work within the constraints of maintaining compatibility with the existing socket. So I'm okay either way. I feel like Zen or AM5 has had a good lifespan. You know, we got like, you got Ryzen 7000, 8000, 9000. So you got like 3 generations on it, even though 8000 is really like mobile stuff, but 4 years, it's fine. But if it goes to if it includes Zen 6, then it makes a lot of sense actually when you think about it, because I hate to be the guy who always says history repeats itself, but I mean, okay, let's do some comparisons here, since we seems to be doing that seems to be a general theme of this live stream. So let's look at this. AM4, Zen 1, Zen Plus, Zen 2, Zen 3, AM5, Zen 4, Zen 4 Plus, Zen 5, Zen 6? History repeats itself? Hmm? Hmm? What do you guys think? Maybe it is gonna be AM5. Let's put it this way. Let's put things another way. Which of these three, AM4, were the most insane impressive? Zen 1, Zen 2, or Zen 3? Or, I mean, Zen Plus. I don't know about Zen Plus. So Ryzen 1000. Here, let's, I need more space. We need to delete the GTR knowledge of, just delete all this stuff over here. I need this space. Although this is going to ruin that bar, I can already tell. It's gonna erase, yeah, it erased the timeline. Whatever. So, let's do this again. AM4, Ryzen 1000. So, let's do another way. Zen 1 equals Ryzen 1000. Zen Plus equals Ryzen 2000. Zen 2 equals Ryzen 3000. Zen 3 equals the very famous and very, very long-lived, apparently, Ryzen 5000. Okay, that's AM4. So maybe AMD has a plan to replicate the same sort of behavior. So you had Zen 4, Ryzen 7000. Zen 4 Plus, Ryzen 8000. Zen 5, Ryzen 9000. So do we get Zen 6 with Ryzen 10,000? If this is true, if it repeats, I'm gonna say something. Zen 6 is going to be a home run. It has the potential to be a home run, because one thing I can say, as someone who has utilized all the generations of Zen on AM4, yes, every single one. I have all the CPUs. I know exactly the weaknesses of all of them. I can tell you all the weaknesses. And the crazy thing is, the weaknesses of the AM4 CPUs carry over to the AM5 CPUs. What do I mean by? I'll give you a very good example. Zen 1, DDR4, memory training stability issues at launch. That was a big deal with the original Ryzen launch, that people didn't really talk about it unless you were an early adopter. Well, guess what? Fast forward 5 years later, 2022 comes around, Zen 4, new socket, new memory. Guess what? Same thing. DDR5, memory training, wake from sleep bugs, bit flipping while it's in standby. I was thinking, really now? We're doing the same thing all over again 5 years later? Like, what is this? So, Zen 1 had all the teething issues. Then Zen Plus came out. And it was like, oh, wow, all of a sudden, it's like the memory controller on T-topology is amazing. But then, you know, what happened over here? Oh, Ryzen 8000 comes out, 8700G. And it's like, whoa, all of a sudden the memory controller on monolithic is like so much better on T-topology. What the heck? Is history repeating itself? So then, 2019. July 7th, 2019. Zen 2 launches. PCI 4.0, the world's first PCIe 4.0 GPU. RX 5700 XT and the 5700 launch on the exact same day as the Zen 2 launch. You have PCIe 4.0 and the world's first PCIe 4.0 GPU. And yeah, it's like a big deal. So, what I remember as someone who upgraded to the 3800X on launch day was I was amazed that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, I can magically now do 64 gigs of DDR4 at 3200, no problem. I don't have to go in the BIOS and mess with things anymore. It just straight up works. Wow, it's magic. And then fast forward to the pandemic and Zen 3 launches, and all of a sudden, it's even better. All of a sudden, I can load up the motherboard with 128 gigs of DDR4, and oh my goodness, it actually works. It's actually running. It posts so fast. Whoa, no more weird memory training like with Zen 1 back in the day. So, the experience from going from early days 2017 Zen 1 to pandemic 2020 Zen 3, the difference in memory stability and memory performance and just overall performance in general was like night and day. Meaning if you were someone who upgraded from Zen 1 all the way to Zen 3, and oh my goodness, if you went from Zen 1 to X3D, Zen 3, whoa. Whoa. It's like, whoa, you just went forward in time by like 20 years. Like, what happened? What? Wait, what's going on? Star Citizen? Wait, what? What's Star Citizen? Like, why is everybody playing Star Citizen? What is this? So it's like, whoa. So if history repeats itself and Zen 6 is gonna be on AM5, it's gonna be Zen 3. It's gonna be good, boys. It's gonna be, all I'm saying is it's gonna be like Zen 3 all over again. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna be so hyped up. If Zen 6 is coming to Zen 5, you know it's gonna be good because Zen 6 equals Zen 3 in terms of goodness. Wow. And we already know DDIMM, LP Cam 2, all that memory stuff, it's all going to be on Zen 6. And you know what Zen 3 could do that Zen 1 and Zen Plus couldn't do? And Zen 2 kind of struggled, especially if you went with a lot of dense RAM. Oh man, memory. Memory compatibility on Zen 3 was perfected. 10 gaming perfected. Man. Okay, so as an AMD said, Zen 5 is the new foundation for coming Zen. Well, from with respect to like instruction sets, yeah. But that's more of like instruction set support. Because remember they changed Zen 4, they introduced AVX 512 double pump, so it's like 256 plus 256. Zen 5 changed it to a full native 512, similar to, oddly enough, Ryzen 9000's AVX 512 implementation is basically the same that the Rocket Lake is doing. So, wow, it's like they borrowed something out of Intel's handbook that Intel threw away in the trash and thought they didn't need it. Kind of like that random Q6600 that I dug out of the trash. But anyway, man, I can't believe I talked for almost 3 hours. I can't, what did we even, we talked about this for like 3 hours? No, we talked about the old CPUs first. Anyway, anyway, all I'm saying, guys, is if Zen 6 is going to be on AM5, you know it's going to be good. You know it's gonna be good. I don't know exactly what Mike is saying, but all I know is when AM4 started. So I'll tell you guys, my personal journey with DDR4 was 2017 through 2019. I used 4x 8 4x8 GB, 32 GB, 3200 MTS, DDR4. This is what I personally used. And from 2019 through 2022, I used 4x16. So I basically made the transition in capacity. I did what I call a memory bump. I did a memory bump throughout the DDR4. I started DDR4 on 32 gigs, and I ended DDR4 on 64 gigs. That's as far as I got. I never did the 128 gigs on DDR4. I know today it's possible to do 128 gigs on DDR4, but by the time those DIMMs started coming out in like 2022, that was the year that AM5 came out, guys, and I made the jump to DDR5 in that era. So now that being said, I did also make a memory bump in the DDR5 era. So this is what I consider enthusiast class memory amounts. So 2022 to when did I do 2023. Wow, I did that transition pretty quick. So I started out with 2x 32. So I started out with DDR5 5600. Yeah. I started with DDR5 5600, 64 gigs, 2 sticks. And then currently, I mean, every time I do the live stream, I show you guys the task manager in the gaming live streams. From 2023, I'm pretty sure it's 2023, yeah. Because we were doing the Tech Thursday stuff in 2023. So it was 3 years ago. So basically, for the last 3 years, I've been on 4x24 for a total of 96 DDR5 6400. So that's kind of and that's kind of where I see DDR5 topping out. I don't see myself going beyond 96 gigs. I will only increase my capacity when DDR6 comes out. Sometime during the DDR6 era is when I will see another memory bump. So typically that's what I use. 96. I typically, like, the computer we're on right now is 96 gigs. 6400. That's literally all I use. I mean, Threadripper is different. Threadripper is 128. So it's like 4 times 32. Those are RDIMM, so there's not a lot of choice there. But yeah, you can see right here, 96 gigs. I always put myself in the area where I consider like future-proof for memory. Meaning I never have to worry about running out of RAM, like no matter what, during the generation of using the computer. So it's like, from my point of view, 96 gigs is where it's at. This is where the enthusiast would be if they care about memory capacity. The balance between memory capacity and speed. So, and you can do 2 sticks. You can do 2 times 48. I have 2 times 48 kits. That's how I was able to make those 192 gigabyte video guides. But personally, I don't run 192 gigs in one computer. Why? Because I have more than one computer, so I have to split my RAM up across multiple computers. So that's the reason why 96 gigs to me is like the best number. Like, that is the number to be at if you care about capacity and never having to worry about like memory. But if you are just trying to play build a gaming computer and you only care about gaming and you want it to go really, really fast, 48 gigs. In this day and age, 48 gigs is the number. Like 48 gigs or 96 gigs. I don't consider 32 and I consider 32 like minimum spec. Like minimum spec. That is so minimum. That ain't no enthusiast computer. If I see someone with 32 gigs, I'm sorry, but that ain't no true enthusiast computer in my mind. I mean, unless it's like DDR5 8000, to me, that ain't no enthusiast class computer. Just saying. I ain't judging. I'm just saying, like, to be a true enthusiast, you're either on 48 gigs if you care about speed, or, and when I say speed, I'm talking DDR5 8000, or you're on, like, at least 64, if not more than 64. Now, 64 has the negative aspect of being dual rank, which is not very good for clocking high or reliably. And that's the reason why I might as well go 96 at that point. But I think 96 is the number. That is the number. Just knowing what I know about RAM and application scaling over time, and all these retro builds have kind of proven a lot of these points in my mind. They've just reinforced all these things. You're in the 96, yeah, man, and you know it's good because you never feel system latency. The computer's always smooth as silk and fast. And Windows can do whatever inefficient things it decides to do, and you don't care because, well, I mean, if you're not using Windows, it doesn't matter. But if you're using Windows like me, Windows 11, and Windows can do whatever it wants, I don't care because I got so much RAM. So you can be as efficient as you want, and I'll never know because the computer's so fast and responsive because I got so much RAM. Yeah, 96 gigs is what I consider the enthusiast. I consider enthusiast numbers are 48. If you're on DDR5, 48 or 96. Those are the numbers. If you go above 96, now you're going to have stability problems. Now you're going to have to mess with proc.dt and really, really know what you're doing. Unless you don't care, and then you can just run your RAM at like 3600. And at that point, it's like, DDR4? Hello? So that's why 96 is the magic number. Trust me, I've done a lot of memory testing. I'm one of the few people on YouTube that has done a lot of memory testing. Like, I do memory testing the way like Asus does memory testing in their R&D labs. So I know what I know from a lot of my testing. And you go talk to like Asus, they'll tell you the exact same stuff that I am telling you. Like, yeah, if you care about capacity, go 96. And if you want speed, go 48. They'll say 32 because there's a ton of 32 kits. But let's be honest, 32 is so minimum spec. It is so normie. It just feels so basic in 2026. Like, I'll tell you what's impressive. If I see someone rolling around with a DDR3 computer with 32 gigs, that's impressive. But if I see someone rolling around with DDR5, 32 gigs, that ain't no impressive computer, man. I'm sorry. You can be proud of it. I'm not gonna judge. But it's just a mainstream computer. It ain't no enthusiast computer. And to add insult to injury, we're in an era right now where DDR5 ain't cheap. So it's like, if you didn't get into DDR5 a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I don't know, man. DDR4 is still out there. DDR4 is still out there. AM4, 14 gen with DDR4 motherboards, I guess. Well, get it while it's there, because as far as I know, 14 gen is end of life now. Because Intel knows they got a winner coming up with this Nova Lake stuff. But the problem is, if you haven't secured DDR5 for Nova Lake, oh, I'm sorry, because it ain't gonna be cheap, and DDR5's not going down in price this year. So we might still see some incremental hikes based off of what I've been told from a lot of other resources. If Apple ever makes gaming work, they'll basically take over, though. Yeah, I know, man. Apple Silicon is magical. I will agree with you there. As someone who doesn't use any or have any Apple products, but I have seen them in action, Apple Silicon is magical. I will acknowledge that Apple knows what they're doing, but it's not just the hardware, though. Like, the hardware and the software together is like that 1-2 punch combo, but you know, the hardware by itself is still rock solid. That memory bandwidth. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. If there's one thing Apple can do, memory bandwidth and single thread performance. That is like the one thing Apple could do. Can you imagine if Apple, like, if AMD could do what Apple could do in terms of single thread and memory bandwidth for consumer devices? What kind of gaming performance would that look like? If you had X3D paired up with Apple's memory bandwidth, oh my goodness, Monster Hunter Wilds would run like butter without frame gen. Because that's what it needs. Like, Monster Hunter is so memory bandwidth bound. Oh man. What's the difference between 96 2 sticks, 96? You got your answer from someone in the chat. That's the answer. Single rank versus dual rank. Why do I do 4 sticks? Because I like the look of 4 sticks. If I have RGB RAM, I want 4 sticks. If I only have 2 sticks, I don't want any RGB. I want the RAM to be completely dark. I don't want to see it. Let me see. How do I get this thing? This tripod can't get low enough for some reason. I don't know how that's gonna look. Let me see. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. There you go. This is the computer we're live streaming on right now. 4 sticks looks better than 2 sticks. If you care about the looks, you're gonna want 4 sticks, 96 gigs total. Because the thing is, 96 gigs across 4 sticks, you don't have to, it's plug and play. You don't have to mess with like anything in the BIOS. You turn on Expo or XMP, you set it and forget it, and that's it, and it works. That's why I like it. If you want to do 120, the moment you want to do anything above 96 gigs, and you want to run it like DDR5 6000 or DDR5 5600, oh boy, get ready to get a PhD in overclocking memory, because it's like that ain't no easy thing. Like, you just activated hard mode. You know what I'm saying? And like Neo 3, or you're now playing Devil May Cry Dante Must Die mode. Like, whoa, you just turned on hard mode. You open Pandora's box if you want to like run 128 or 192 gigs or 256 gigs. Now there are some kits, we're not even going to talk about them because they're so astronomically expensive. If you don't have like $5,000 ready to spend on memory, then you know, like, it's one of those things where someone used to say, like, if you have to ask how much it costs, then you're probably not the target customer. You know, like that. It's that kind of thing. So it's like, there's RAM out there that is plug and play for 256 gigs across 4 sticks, but it's so expensive that it's probably not even worth imagining that it exists. I'm just saying. But yeah, 4 sticks, man. 4 sticks is where it's at. It just looks so much better if you care about how your computer looks. $192, not $196. Yeah, but it's not easy though. What I have shown you guys is not easy to do because there's still a lot of variables. And what I show in my video works for the set of hardware that I have shown. It might not work for someone else's motherboard and someone else's memory kit. So hence the reason why I always recommend 96 gigs. Because 96 gigs It's plug and play. You don't need to watch a tutorial on how to get it to work. You know, it's easy. So that's kind of where it's at. So those are the numbers, man. 48. That's why I say 48 fast, 96 big. If you want big memory, you want to go big capacity, 96 gigs is kind of the top end for DDR5. And it's nice because you're still getting more than people who are on 64. And you're still able to get the same speeds that people are getting on 64. Exactly. You just turn on Expo and you walk away. It's that simple. So, yeah, that's exactly what I did. I don't have to tweak anything. It's like all the stuff that I show in my guide video, that's if you're trying to do 192 or 128. 96, plug and play, easy. 4 sticks, easy. 2 sticks, even easier. But 4 sticks, it's single rank. It's single rank, so it's easy. That is the key. Do not try to do 4 sticks of dual rank. That is when you get into problems. That's when you activate hard mode. Is when you try to do 4 sticks of dual rank. That is the key. Do not do 4 sticks of dual rank unless you really, really know what you're doing, or you're going to go watch my videos on how to do that. And you have to have like similar memory. Like, don't go buy some random memory and expect it to just plug and play my settings, because that might not work. Trust me, I've tested a bunch of DDR5. So it's like, I know when certain kits work and others don't. But in general, SK Hynix is what I recommend. SK Hynix memory, easy. It's predictable in terms of how it behaves. With Samsung and Micron, you have a lot of weird... Micron has this weird dead zone where it's like all of a sudden, like, you don't know if it's actually stable. Like, you have to actually do more than just Y cruncher to make sure that it's stable. And then Samsung just heats up, man. Samsung is just awful for DDR5. Like, if you care about performance, because it's like the moment you go above like 1.2 or 1.25 volts on Samsung, you better have active cooling on your RAM. Otherwise, you aren't going to be going very fast with those Samsung memory. Like, that is going to be toasty. We're talking like thermal throttling on the RAM, or instability, or worse, OS corruption and loss of data. So it's like, that ain't no joke. You don't want to mess around with unstable memory. You gotta have one of those big, like, fans or those weird fans that they sell now with these newer motherboards that cool the RAM actively. Yeah, active cooling on RAM is actually something that I expect to see with the next set of motherboards. I think we're gonna see it more and more for like enthusiast motherboards. All right, well, I think the stream is now like over 3 hours, so this is kind of the limit. Let me see. Did I cover all the stuff? Oh, we didn't even get a chance to talk about Nintendo Direct. So I watched all of the gaming stuff. I watched Nintendo Direct. I watched the Xbox thing. I have some things to say about those two events. I also watched the well, I mean, we kind of talked about it already, but the game, what do they call it? The Summer Game Fest thing. Yeah, I saw that too. Out of all of them, the Nintendo Direct was the most impressive. The Xbox one was the most surprising. I think Xbox is really, really changing. You can tell that Xbox has undergone a regime change. Like, it really shows in what they announce and how they're carrying themselves now. So I think Xbox understands, the new leadership at Xbox under Asha Sharma understands that we need to save our brand. We need to consolidate our brand and make it powerful again, so that the gamers respect the brand of Xbox. That's what it's about. Make the gamers respect the Xbox brand. Internally, that's kind of what they're saying. Now, obviously, they're not going to say it that way because it sounds too harsh, but that's actually what they're doing. The new Gears of War Day and the new Clockwork Revolution looks good. Yeah, I mean they had. I mean those are the games which were good, but you have to try to like read between the lines sometimes in terms of trying to figure out the direction that they plan to go sometimes. So Xbox is desiring to capture a lot of what the success that Steam has managed to get on the PC market. And I feel like that's one of her key like her key metrics in terms of her long-term success at leading Xbox as a brand. I mean Asha Sharma, the person who replaced Phil Spencer. I think her long-term goal is to see Xbox successfully manage to capture the hearts of gamers, not just in the console space. That for that they have to re-engage with gamers to get them enthusiastic about the Xbox console again. And I think there's some certain things that they announce and that they're doing that show that that's part of their strategy. That is very obvious. For an industry analyst, everyone's going to pick up on that. But the other thing that's kind of more subtle, and I've been talking about this on several Tech Thursdays now, they want the success of Steam. They want what Steam has right now in terms of the gamers, the popularity with gamers. And I think Microsoft tried to purchase Discord years ago and it ended up not going through, but they're not obviously I'm not suggesting they're going to try to purchase Steam or Valve. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Microsoft understands where the gamers flock, the platforms that gamers prefer. Steam, Discord, like Discord for more like the social networking aspect, but Steam for the gaming distribution network. So they want that kind of success. I know that they want that. I can sense it. Like Palpatine can sense, it's like I can feel your anger. It makes you focused. It's the same thing with Microsoft. I can sense that from Microsoft. I have sensed that for a long time now. And it'll be interesting to see how she shapes the strategy around that goal. Because Phil Spencer kind of had a like shotgun approach. We're going to go everywhere. Everyone's going to know about Xbox. It's going to be like in mobile, in PC, and it's like everywhere. That strategy didn't really work. I mean, it kind of had a mixed success because the negative aspect of Phil Spencer's strategy was the fact that it diluted the brand. It diluted the brand too much. It spread it out way too much. And I think now the idea is how do you bring it back where it's focused and it resonates with gamers and they become enthusiastic about the brand again. They want it to become as successful as it was in the 360 era. I think that's kind of the ultimate goal. If I was Asha Sharma, I would really study up on what made the 360 generation great, and I would go with that. I would try to not copy paste that, but like shape the strategy in a way, obviously with a modern spin, but with a way that kind of like gets the magic of Xbox, that essence that made Xbox cool, and just kind of go from there. I think if she can do that, I think they're gonna be a very, very strong force to be reckoned with in the next basically the next console generation. And I feel like the move back to exclusivity for certain games, I think that is something that we are going to see, whether you like it or not. It definitely creates teams like, oh, this guy's an Xbox team member, or this guy's a PlayStation guy, or whatever. Like, I think that's what it's going to do. I mean, but that's what made the console wars. That's what made the 7th gen of gaming so magical, at least partially. So I think they're going to move back to that. I think Sony is going to go in that direction. They've already hinted at it. And Nintendo's still doing their thing. And the Nintendo Direct was the most impressive one overall because the Nintendo Direct announced so many games that I would never imagine running on the Switch 2. So we'll talk about this, I guess, on the weekend live stream. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this episode of Tech Thursdays. If you're new to the channel, this is basically what Tech Thursdays is. We kind of talk about all things PC DIY, all things that appeal to people who build custom PCs or are into gaming or into home lab or workstation or whatever. I mean, we cover all that. We cover Threadripper on this channel as well. So if you're interested in this type of content and you would like to participate, do get subscribed to the channel. That does help me out. And if you want to get notified when I go live, because sometimes we do random off-the-wall live streams, like random custom PC builds, like we did like on Tuesday night, do hit the bell icon so you get notified when I go live. As always, guys, thanks for supporting the channel, and I will see you guys next time. Until then, take care, and I will see you then. Thanks.